Supporters, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call of supervisors, please? We have a full house tonight, so we're going to move on to citizen comments. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is John O'Connor. I live at 72nd and 5th in Kenosha County. I was originally a member of the Kemper Center board. I found that being active in the board took too much of my time, and I wasn't doing justice to my clients in my law practice. I duped Gary Gronke into beginning to serve on the board, and he has worked hard and served on it ever since. The school or the property in question was a private girls' school that couldn't make it financially, and rather than selling the property, several of its alumni got together and bought the property so that it could be preserved. They originally went to the city to see if the city would take it over. The city said no. The county was gracious enough to say that they would take over, and they got the property for free, and they had paid nothing for it. The people on the board of Kenosha, the Kemper Center, have served there voluntarily. They're people who are very busy and some of the most prestigious people in the community. They have donated their time in order to continue and maintain the property. The property is used, because I go by it every day on my way to work, by thousands of people. When there are festivals and other things, that are extremely well attended. People come from all around the area to go there, and they spend a significant amount of money when they come here, going to restaurants and other kinds of things. It has been a great boon, and a great number of people use it for recreation, use it for weddings, use it for meetings. It's something that is a vital part of the community. People have complained about the way that it has been run. Of their sometimes $800,000 budget, the county contributes $150,000. This is a private charity who operates the land in question, and if it were operated by county employees, it would be much more expensive than what it costs to have all of these volunteers, not just the board members, but lots of other people who donate their time so that the people of Kenosha County can enjoy this park. It is a wonderful asset to the community. Certainly the county has an obligation to make sure that the funds that the county is giving from the taxpayers are properly used. But there's a big difference between investigating and harassing people. At a certain point in time, you cross over the line and you're asking, I'm not saying the county board has gone over the line, but other people have gone over the line and have expected them to justify every bit of money that they spend. And that's simply not fair. I'm just, as people are looking at the clock, I understand that my time here is done. But I beseech you to not look a gift horse in the mouth. This is something that is valuable to the community, and people have spent a lot of time and a lot of money through charitable donations and other things in order to keep this operation going. If it wasn't going and going well, no one would volunteer their time to work there, and none of us would give significant amounts of money to keep it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Priscilla Weisner, 8710 Lakeshore Drive, Pleasant Prairie. I'm here representing the Durkee Mansion Holiday Decorators. Have all of you been to Durkee Mansion at the holidays? If you haven't, I actually bought a picture book along, but I'm afraid I wouldn't get it back before it was time for me to leave. I'm going to talk about what 14 people do this year, the hours that we contribute to Durkee Mansion. We have 14 volunteers that will spend over 500 hours decorating the house. We work 9 hours a week per person for 4 weeks. Hours spent at home, because not everything is there at Kemper Center for us to decorate. We spend about 12 hours per volunteer preparing to decorate, that for 168 hours. And then the house is open starting the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and somebody has to be there. And since we're so proud of our work, we actually spend extra hours staffing the house when it's open to the tune of about 225 hours. So this year, 14 people will volunteer almost 900 hours to see the joy in people's faces and actually to make money. I don't have the numbers, but I can remember when Diane was alive, how the Sunday after Thanksgiving, she'd be literally sitting on a pile of money. So I know that we make money for Kemper Center and the people that do the decorating, and it's not just all women, guys. There are men there too. We really like what we're doing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ann Morelli. My address is 7733 3rd Avenue. I live in Kenosha. I own Morelli's Deli with my husband Thomas, and we're formerly Southport Pantry, which is at 7506 77th Avenue. For the last 2 years, we've been catering through Kemper Center for Kiwanis and Rotary. And the reason that we started catering was because we had lost a fair amount of business over the years, just because there's more businesses like ours in the neighborhood, like the Walgreens and some of the liquor stores and just more convenience stores. And we decided to get into catering, and it's been very good for us. We were pretty new at it. The people at Kemper actually helped us. The staff that was there, from Cindy, who's just started in November, who's actually, I think, in a lot of ways legitimizing the structure of Kemper. When I go there, there's more available as far as supplies, things that should be there. I think she's done an excellent job in getting some of the equipment fixed. But it's helped our business. We're a very small business. It's helped us a lot. And we've also gotten more people in because of doing the catering there. And I don't have any problems with the staff. If I do, we just work it out. It's, very small issues. They're not big issues. And I really don't have a lot to do with the whole structure. I really don't know that much about, the whole Kemper. It's a very big operation. The food part is not, it's just part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Cindy Gruby. I live at 702 16th Place, Kenosha. I am the Director of Hospitalities at the Kemper Center. I've been there almost a year. I've been in the hospitality business for many years. One of the unique things about Kemper Center is the history that's involved in there. I think that's a very good focus point, and that's why people come to the Kemper Center, because of the venue itself. I have worked with 11 different caterers this year, sometimes working with 2 different ones at one given time. Wonderful. Every caterer that's walked into Kemper Center is just absolutely wonderful. I don't know why we're here this evening. I was hired on to make money for Kemper, and I find that opening up the venue for different caterers has helped us in a long run. So it's what the client wants. I don't want this one, I don't want that one, I want this one. Bring them in. License and insurance, that's all you need. And my focus is on making the client happy. When I do a function, I'm there from the beginning of the event, I'm there to the end of the event. I'm the one that's saying hello, and I'm the one that's hugging them, saying good night, and have a pleasant night. Other than that, I've worked with Sophistic Catering. They're great people. Like I said, I don't know what the problem is, but working at Kemper, it's very enjoyable, very enjoyable. The staff is terrific. We all work together, and the main focus is what the client wants, and that's what we're all about at Kemper. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Carrie Turco, 5315 43rd Street. I am the relatively new bookkeeper at the Kemper Center. I was hired with a mandate. I was to be able to produce reports for the board on a timely basis, to analyze fundraising efforts and make them more efficient and effective if I found deficiencies, which I haven't really, although there are always places to improve, and we will. I've also been mandated to analyze the utility bills and find and implement cost savings. I also started renegotiating contracts, service contracts. Within a couple of weeks and after speaking with many of the volunteers and employees, it became clear to me that the people involved in the daily operations of the Kemper Center, including the Anderson Arts Center, are involved because they love it and they're 100% dedicated to keeping it open and running, which is no easy or inexpensive task, to be sure. They were all welcoming to me, and even when I questioned some of them on their responsibilities and their hours and their pay, they were gracious and team-spirited and understood that I had a job to do. I've stepped on some toes and I've made quite a few vendors kind of nervous, but I've already renegotiated payroll service, slashing our costs 30%. I'm in the process of renegotiating with the internet and computer support people and expect about a 25% discount. I've ordered another energy analysis from We Energies, and I'm researching alternative forms of energy to cut our nearly $80,000 a year annual gas and electric bills. I've researched new banks, new credit card processing companies, even entertained the notion of bringing our own ATM on board so that maybe we could make some money. My full analysis on each of our larger fundraisers has prompted planned changes for next year. I've presented to the executive board 3 pages of new fundraising ideas, new efficiency measures for old fundraisers, new membership drive ideas, and a couple more community and children-oriented fundraising ideas. I'm happy to report that the board listens to each idea. Sometimes they approve them right away. Sometimes they say, let us think on that. I have felt supported and appreciated by Gary Valancourt, Gary Gronke, Frank Sarter, and especially our treasurer, Tom Ordendorf, who I enjoy working closely with and learning from. I've made a couple mistakes, apologized right away and corrected them as soon as I could, and I've never been mistreated or even admonished for that. The Kemper Center is a special place. I kid all the time that the reason we all love it there is probably because we were reincarnated from the nuns that used to be there or something, because that's about the only thing that makes sense. But thank you. I absolutely want you to know that you can count on me as the bookkeeper to be conscientious and frugal and a good steward of the operating monies that the county allows to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Lee Arneson. My address is 4502 58th Street. I have volunteered lots of places in the city, but my favorite place is Anderson Arts Center, and I've been there probably like 15 years. When I was working, I would only be able to work or volunteer maybe on Sundays. I want to tell you a little, I love working with Candace and Carolina. They're great, great, great people. But I want to tell you a little story. About 10 years ago, it was snowing so bad. I drove all the way down there, got down there, and Bob, everybody knows Bob, was shoveling snow. And he said, "Lee, what are you doing here?" I said, "I don't know. Nobody told me not to come, so here I am." He said, "Well, I'm just going to be shoveling snow." And I said, "Well, I'm here. I might as well stay here." So I stayed, and I said, "When you're ready to leave, come and let me know, and I'll leave with you." I was sitting there, I'm a knitter, I was sitting there knitting and listening to the music. The door opened and a lady came in. I looked at her and I said, "Where did you come from?" And she said, "New York City." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, how did you get here?" She said, "I took a train from Chicago and then I took a cab to come here." I said, "Why are you here?" She said, I heard about this place. I heard this is the best place in this whole area. She said, I'm glad that you're here. Can I stay? I said, sure. I took her around. I showed her everything. I took her upstairs, showed her all the artwork. I showed her the kitchen, which she really loved to see. And she came back to one piece of artwork all the time. And she said, how can I have that? How can I get that artwork? I said, well, I can't mark it sold till I put it on your charge card. She said, fine. Put it on her charge card. I looked at it. It was $1,200. Well, back then, that was quite a bit of money. Then she said, will you call me a cab? And I said, no. I said, we don't have a train. Are you going to be back by the train? She said, yes. I said, no. Why don't you stay here with me? I will take you to the train. We don't have a place you can go inside. So I went, took her back to the train. When I left, she got in her train. Tuesday, I got a call saying, is that sale legit? I said, yes, it is. She's waiting to hear how much it costs. She ranted and raved about how great this little Kenosha with this little art center was. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Name is Bob Hall, 7107 Fifth Avenue. This is going to be short and sweet. I'm a retired carpenter. I help out at Kemper whenever I can with some of my carpenter skills. And I also volunteer as a docent at the Durkee Mansion and at Anderson Art Center. I just want to say I hope nothing changes. We're doing a great job there. I just want it to stay the way it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is June Pomato. My address is 581 11th Place. I've been part of Kemper Center for over 20 years, probably 22 or 3 years. I was part of a group of artists that did our best to persuade whoever that it should be an art gallery. And as Bob just said, it's well known beyond Kenosha. A lot of people come here. I, as an artist, appreciate the gallery. I do gallery sitting. I volunteer there a lot more hours at Christmas time, and have done so for at least 23 years. It's enriched my life and the life of many artists in Kenosha. It's an absolute jewel for Kenosha. So I just want to say, I hope, as Bob said, that it stays the way it is. It's a wonderful place, and Kenosha would be bankrupt without it.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Bernice Serpy, 3037 24th Street, Kenosha. I've been around Kemper and Anderson for over 30 years. When I was a student at Parkside during the 80s, I was fortunate to be part of Gallery 120 floor, which was in a building that's now been raised. And that's where it all started for us area artists. And I was proud to be a part of it, along with Virginia Tapman, Florence Perry Heidi, June Pomato, Ruth Miles, Lois Mogensen, all wonderful, creative, talented people. Then came a time we all went over to Anderson. And now a group of 15 of us, we call ourselves area artists. And we're on the second floor where we display our works. And our exhibit changes whenever the major exhibit downstairs changes. And we volunteer all of our time to present wonderful art to the public. We see so many families come through. We see people from California, all over the world, maybe not that much, but all over the United States come to Anderson and are so impressed with the quality of work we have there. And it would be a shame if that didn't continue for our children. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and we want to keep Kemper the way it is, and I'm so proud to be a part of it for all these years. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Annette Flynn, 7945 18th Avenue, Kenosha. I'm one of the owners of Sophistic Catering, and I'd like to state a few items in the county's lease with Kemper Center, quotes from it. Leasee shall have the right to all fees, rentals, and other revenues that have been generated. It is agreed that all such charges shall be expense related, end of quote. Quote, it is agreed to that the fullest possible use of the demise shall be the principal goal of both the leaser and the leasee, end of quote. I want to explain how booking a wedding at Kemper Center works, the challenges any catering professional in Kenosha County has when they try to compete with the Granky package, I'd like to call it, now being promoted bi-weekly in the Kenosha News wedding section and in handouts that go to the brides when inquiring with Kemper Center's venue, as well as the Kemper Center's website. The Granky package sells for $7,995. In this package, they choose the DJ for you, the bakery, which is Sweet Discoveries out of Antioch, Sunnyside Florist, a caterer, which is Victoria's, the preferred caterer of Kemper Center, that they like to call it, and a photographer, all for the price of $7,995. The caterer supplies a 3-entree meal in this for 110 people. I've been working with brides in Kenosha for over 25 years, and I can tell you this. A typical bride wants the caterer of her choosing based on past experiences, references, private tastings, working directly with the chef and catering director. Gary Granke has said more than once that he does not know the first thing about catering. He quoted it. I have it on tape. Yet he chooses the caterer, the DJ, the florist, the baker, the photographer of his own self-preference and builds it into a money-losing package, except for the Granke-approved vendors, that no other caterer could ever afford to match. In my opinion, this is too much control over a typical bride's special day and will only result in the bride choosing another venue for her wedding. If a bride were to come to us and want to book Kemper Center, the hall rental for founders on their brochure is $7,000 for the event. Now, a catered 3-entree buffet from us with gratuity of 18% is $22.36 per person. I do wedding cakes, $3.95 per person for that. A wedding for 110 people with all of this included with the hall would come to $9,894.10. Kemper would get $7,000 and we would take the rest for that. To me, how can a bride go with us when they have this phenomenal deal for $7,995? We've done a handful of events there in 2016. We have 5 more events there till the end of the year. But we've had sabotage by employees of Kemper Center. I've sent all of you emails showing the pictures of what has gone on there with our client on August 6th. We ended up having to resort to serving a 3-entree plated dinner from the parking lot. 3 choices. But no, our client left the best feedback that any caterer could ask for, and I'm going to read it. It's on Facebook. Annette and her staff were just wonderful. We used Sophistic Catering for our wedding in August of 2016. The elevator at our venue was out of order, making it impossible for Annette and her staff to use the kitchen inside the venue. So what did they do? Annette and her wonderful staff set up a mobile kitchen behind our venue, outside, and cooked all the food out there. It was 163 people plated. I could not have been more impressed. The food was perfect. The service excellent, and we received more than our money's worth. Excellent staff, excellent service, extremely professional, wonderfully delicious food, and the ability to improvise in any situation to obtain excellent results. This is the company you want for your next event. Another event we did there was Kemper Alumni. Again, this one, for whatever reason, Kemper decided that they needed to hire 3 people on staff on their end to watch my employees work for 35 people for a plated lunch for Kemper Alumni. This event in itself was a losing proposition for Kemper Center because it's the Kemper Alumni. They got the room and everything for free. I'm not bashing them for that, but really, 3 people had to sit on staff to watch us serve 35 ladies for lunch. I don't understand that one. We have 5 more events there through the end of the year, 1 this weekend on Saturday, and it better not go the way August 6th did, because I will not have it. It's cold outside, and I don't think it would go that smoothly. We have an event there on December 5th, my biggest client. I brought them there 2 years ago. Biggest Christmas party there. I met with them the other day to finalize their menu. They've told me that Cindy from Kemper Center has not gotten back to them, and they're wondering if it's still on.
Wednesday.
Excuse me. So those are my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Matt Flynn, 7945 18th Avenue in Kenosha. I'm the owner as well, Sophisticatering. I'm here today to speak. At yesterday's board meeting, Mr. Gary Granke, chairman of Kemper Center, spoke to you in regards to the $50,000 the county allocates yearly for Kemper Center and the $100,000 that the county donates to Kemper Center. Please note the yearly contribution of $100,000 worth of taxpayer money has never been itemized for oversight, and only summaries have been given to the county or citizens for review. Last night, Granke praised Supervisor Ron Frederick for attending every single Kemper board meeting on behalf of the county and for his great work he does informing the county of the workings of Kemper Center with Kenosha County. My experience with Supervisor Ron Frederick has been not so positive. All my emails to Ron regarding problems at Kemper Center have been completely ignored. Open record law requests have been ignored as well. On the Finance Administration Committee meeting audio of August 11th of this year, Supervisor Frederick was asked by Chairman Rose, who, by the way, we met with on June 13th, and suggested to us that we hire an attorney to report back to the committee any problems Kemper Center has in the future, which irritated Frederick as he responded that until now he has never had a problem at Kemper Center, and he will report back to the committee in the future with no problems, as if he's psychic. I have a long list of problems that Kemper Center has had in just this year, as all of you, including Frederick, are well aware of. Just this year. Until Supervisor Ron Frederick is replaced as the sitting county board member on Kemper's board, I intend to make it my job to inform the county board in person or by email of the many problems that plague the facility currently. You may ask yourself why any of Kemper Center's problems are my business. Well, the financial report of 2015 handed out at the annual Kemper board meeting, June 7th, reports event sales Kemper Center totaled $11,791, or 2% of 2015 income. 2% for events. My catering firm generated $22,000 in commissions alone in 2015. That's twice the amount of sales listed on the annual report. This does not even include room and other charges Kemper Center bills to my clients who have events at Kemper. I would like to know where the money generated directly from Sophisticatering in 2015 was allotted. Is it contributions, special events, donations, grants? By the way, Kemper lists sales expenses at $19,681. Not quite, but almost twice the expense to sales ratio. No wonder they're asking you for money. There have also been much information floating around the Kenosha News, Racine Media, and within the county board regarding $50,000 and the $100,000 and how it is to be used. Jenny Tonke says on June 8, 2016, it operates independently as nonprofit business would. Kemper receives $100,000 for capital improvements, not for operations. Let's set the record straight. I've seen this in the Kenosha News many times. It is not. That is not true. And I have emails from Jim Cooper stating that in an email to Jeannie, capital is $50,000 and operations is $100,000. So she now knows. Kenosha News, if they're here, they now know. I'd like to see the record straight. My closing point is that Kemper is one of the best wedding venues in Kenosha County. However, many citizens will never use the facility because of the way it's run and the loops one has to jump through to book an event at Kemper. Properly run by somebody with experience in event management, given the proper tools and the freedom to operate, Kemper Center could easily book capacity in the summer months and have enough off-season events, it would no longer need financial support that all of you are voting on today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address for the record.
Frank Sarder, 4908 32nd Avenue. I just wanted to address the wedding package that they referred to. Gary Gronke's firm is a marketing brand image firm that deal with many large corporations throughout the country. We're very fortunate to have their support without having to write a check for a brochure or input on marketing. The package was primarily to get the phone to ring. It might be like advertising a $10,000 car. You go in to look at it, you end up with a $15,000, $20,000 car. I think the phone's probably rung 50, 60 times for that ad. We've had one, I believe, that took the package and upgraded from there. It's $79.95, and like she mentioned, it's for so many people. If they have 20 more, if the DJ is for 3 hours and you want 4, you want coffee and this and that, and I think we ended up, that package was closer to $10,000. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was the one time that we had it. But it does make the phone ring, and that's what we're trying to do, is get people to pick up the phone and call. The other thing I believe was just mentioned about usage. I think weddings are under public usage in the annual report, and special events is where other catering events would be. So together it's more like $380,000. It's not 2%. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jerry Doherty. I've been a volunteer at Kemper for 7.5 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But I have seen more potential what Kemper can offer. I'm an ex-dancer, and I dance with the New York City Ballet Company. Consequently, I saw the potential of what Kemper could offer. We have this wonderful gym. So I started an academy of ballroom dancing. I'm going into my 3rd year. I have lessons every Tuesday, 5-week courses. I have 14 to 19 couples in my classes. You all should come. But anyhow, I am working on, what I'd like to do is have a state invitational dance competition. Now, Kemper has that, but the floor is terrible. It would need complete renovation. The stage, the lighting, broken windows, torn screens. So for me to undertake and to do this, and it would benefit Kenosha. I mean, I'm talking a state competition. And I really, like I say, I don't have any notes, I'm just winging this. But I really, really would like you all to take into consideration what we have here in Kemper, the tradition. A lot of people don't even know we're there. So this is how I just want to say how I enjoyed working, and I give the tours every Friday at Turkey Camp. So thank you for your indulgence. Good night.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name's Catherine Pora, and my address is 7725 25th Avenue in Kenosha. And I just want to say this is my 3rd year with Kemper in the ballroom dance, and I love it there. And I love all the people that can come to the dance. We really don't have a lot of stuff here for people to go dancing, and when they find out, they're just ecstatic about it. And our whole group is trying to do the best we can to bring more in, and it is beneficial for Kemper and bringing things into Kemper. And I can't say enough about it. I really can't. I'm always excited about it, and Jerry's really good and the rest of our volunteers. We have a nice place for people to come from all over, and we do get people from all over. And that's all I can say. Thank you. Come dance.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Citizen comments? Citizen comments? Seeing no other citizen comments, they're now closed. We'll move on with our agenda. Okay. I have no announcements. Supervisor reports. No supervisor reports. Okay. County Clerk, we're up to you now.
Okay. Policy resolution, second reading to required from the Finance and Administration Committee, a policy resolution 2017 Kenosha County budget. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Esposito, yes. Retzloff, yes. Kubicki, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move the 2017 county budget.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
All right. Thank you. Last night we talked about some of the highlights of the budget. I don't want to repeat those points this evening, but would emphasize a few other points. If you look back over the last 8 years, I think our budgets have been characterized by a certain continuity and stability that have been recognized by bonding rating firms in this country. We have seen our bond rating increased, and we are very close at this point to become a AAA county budget, as recognized by firms like Standard & Poor's and Fitch. It is the goal of the Finance Committee and primary goal to see to it that in the next few years we achieve that goal of a AAA community. Green Bay is a AAA community, Waukesha is, and Dane County. And we see no reason why that isn't achievable for Kenosha County as well, provided that we continue on with the same kind of continuity and stability that we've seen demonstrated in the last 8 years. If you have a $100,000 home in 2017, and that is a $100,000, the same $100,000 home in 2016, your tax rate per thousand is going to decrease from $5.12 to $5.05. It's not a lot, but it demonstrates a real conservative viewpoint on the part of the Finance Committee, and is supported by this county board for a number of years. Our reserves are now at 29% of our operating budget, some $18+ million. We have a new standard, as if you look at our policies, to have our reserves at 25% of our operating budget in place of the older 17%. And this new standard is one that has been significant in making presentations to the bonding agencies. I've left on your desk a summary of the general fund, some areas where budget increases have caused some issues, and some areas where we have seen issues where we have many plus points there as well. But what it all adds up to is a ever increasing general reserves of some 29% and some $18,210,000 in spite of problems and in spite of but we are able to deal with those problems effectively, as demonstrated by this analysis I have placed on your desk. Now, this analysis is straight from the CPA's annual report. This is a objective CPA viewpoint after reviewing our finances. And when the bonding agencies rate Kenosha County, they take a look at the directions, they take a look at where are the problem areas, where the economic development is, where we might have pluses and minuses or shortcomings. But in the final analysis, you can see that our bond rating this past year was advanced, and we're looking forward to continuing that trend. Now, this evening there are 3 budget resolutions before you dealing with bonding. They totaled some $46 million, and perhaps at first blush you might say, well, that's a great deal of money. It's more than we did last year. Is that justified, and how does that compare to, let's say, a benchmark of 2008? Where were we in 2008? We owed a long-term debt of $216 million. Where are we going to be in 2017 with this $45 million addition? Again, 2008, $216 million. 2017, with the $46 million that we are asking you to support this evening, we're at $185 million. So with it, we're decreasing. And we're projecting that by 2020, we will have paid off some $50 million in principal and interest. So we're certainly going in the right direction. We're decreasing the rate of debt, even though we are asking you to support some $46 million for various projects, which I will more in detail describe as we get to each one of those resolutions. So in addition to what I said last evening, I think this budget is a conservative budget. I think it goes in the right direction. It's defensible. It's been viewed by our bonding rating agencies. It's been viewed by our CPAs who come in and objectively take a look at where our spending was in the past year. And the management discussion and analysis has been very good. We haven't seen criticism of it. So I think from the Finance Committee's our recommendation is to support the budget as presented to you this evening, and I would urge your vote in support of it at the conclusion of our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Dodge, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favor of the overall 2017 budget resolution, and I intend to vote for passage of the resolution. I am aware that there could be a perceived conflict of interest on my part related to those parts of the budget which concern the personnel budget, and particularly changes to the insurance coverage. But I am also aware my responsibility to my constituents to participate in what is likely the most important vote we take each year. Accordingly, and after consultation with Corporation Counsel, I will abstain from debating or voting on any amendments related to the insurance coverage, and I would ask the clerk to note that my vote in favor of the budget resolution includes an abstention from voting on that portion of the budget. I appreciate your consideration in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Gilmore, you have the floor.
Thank you. At $6.6 million of county tax dollars over the life of our lease with Kemper, to say that Kenosha County received Kemper Center property for no cost is not correct. I've had the chance to attend 2 of the 4 budget hearings where I witnessed firsthand the Finance and Administration's total disregard for the Facilities Committee's unanimous recommendation to cut $5,000 from Kemper Center annual donation. This board needs to know where every county dollar given to Kemper Center is being spent. I was personally told by Jenny Tonkeys as well as Supervisor Elverman that we don't give money to Kemper Center for operations and we have no say in how they operate. County Executive Cruiser assured me this was not an item he was interested in keeping in the budget after the committee voted it out. Tonight, I'm making a motion to eliminate $100,000 from the Kemper Center donation.
I have a first and a second, and we will
debate that one first. Yeah. Who seconded that one? Oh, Supervisor Skotsky. Okay, I'm going to clear the board to debate that one first. Supervisor Rhodes, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Let's go back a little bit in history and recognize that this is a county park. It was donated by private citizens who purchased it and gave it to Kenosha County, and we established it as a county park. Just as we have a Petrifying Springs Park, just as we have a Silver Lake Park, just as we have other parks. This is no different. It could be staffed by Kenosha County personnel. The guideline we have is that Kemper has 6 full-time people. They have 22 part-time people. They have numerous volunteers. I've been told somewhere between 75 and 100. And if we were going to staff this park, wouldn't we have to hire 6 people, 22 part-time people, at a cost exceeding $500,000? Now, some 40 years ago, supervisors had the foresight to accept that donation as a county park. This is not the playground of a few people who are alumni of the institution, who enjoy going over there and donating their time, energy, and money. This is a government park, and that's something to keep in mind, because many people I hear who are in support of the elimination of this $100,000 seem to characterize this in the wrong way. They characterize this as a donation, much as perhaps the United Way raises money from the community and donates part of it to the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boys and Girls Club. That isn't what this is. This is not a donation. This is a very conservative type of contract called privatization. And as long as I have been on this board, I have heard from time to time different supervisors advocating that we outsource various functions of county government because the private sector can do it cheaper and better. Well, that's precisely what this is. This is classic textbook privatization. We have contracted with an agency called Kemper Center Incorporated to do all of the things that we might be doing if we hired county employees to administer it, to operate it, and we would have to pay all of them to do this. Mr. Gronke isn't paid, for this abuse that he has to take. He's a volunteer, as is Mr. Sarter and all kinds of other people who serve now and who have served in the past, like Mr. O'Connor. This is a very inexpensive way of operating a county park. What other park offers art exhibits? What other park teaches young people in an art class? Or what other has such diversity that you see young people and young adults playing soccer on the soccer field? What other venue has weddings and concerts and jazz concerts and all kinds of other events? A German fest in the fall, musicals in the summer. You show me one other venue in this community that can match that list that I have given you, and that's not an exhaustive list. So when we talk about this $100,000, compare that to the $500,000 plus. Now I would ask those people who are supporting this, what is your end game here? If we eliminate the $100,000, where do we go from here? Do I hear now a proposal that we hire people in substitution of those who are being paid the $100,000? Are you going to then present to us a proposal that we add to the budget $500,000 or $600,000 minimum? Don't forget, we pay benefits to all of these salaries. Is that your end game? Is your end game just to shut it up and close it up and do nothing with it? That isn't a wise use of a historical site. Are you just going to destroy that and demolish all of these buildings, much as we have seen being done in the Middle East with the destruction by ISIS of various historical sites? Is that your end game here? Because in asking this board to eliminate $100,000, I want to know what do we do from there, and where do we go from there? I've heard some criticisms here that they haven't given us their annual report. I can only speak for myself, but I can take an oath and swear that every year I have received an annual report and looked that report over. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have received it. And if you want specific financial information, it is there. And if you look at that lease, it does not read that an individual supervisor has the authority to obtain that financial information, but you can get that. It does, however, say that the county board can request financial information, but every year they give their audit to the finance department, they give their reports to the administration, they are open and transparent. This is the first time any individual supervisor has requested some individual annual reports or financial information. They're not holding it back. They're not holding it back, and they have never held it back. They've given it to the administration, and you're welcome to take a look at it at any time. So I am sorry to see this kind of motion. It came before the committee not in the form of elimination of $100,000, but in the proposition that we withdraw $5,000, which I viewed as just an attempt to slap them in the face, to reprimand them, to throw a mud ball at them, and I frankly can't understand it. I attend most of their events. There is an event this Sunday and a reception for a new art exhibit that they are opening. I've attended the jazz concerts. I've attended the Oktoberfest. I have gone and seen what the children are doing in some of the art classes. I've attended weddings there, and I've attended many other events there as well. But what I do remember in attending is who is not there. And very frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen very few of you there. But I would still hope that in the future that you would be in attendance, because if you were in attendance, and I would welcome you to come with me at some of those events, because if you did, you would not be supporting the motion that you are proposing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Gilmore, you have the floor.
Thank you. We, this county board, have to get confirmation of where every tax dollar going to Kemper Center has been spent over the last 5 years. It is correct to say that we have no say in how Kemper Center operates, but is it okay with this board to just hand over $100,000 with no accountability as to where the money is spent? I've asked for 5 months where that $100,000 is being spent with no answer. Along with many of you, I have seen where the $50,000 for CIP is being spent, but I'm very interested in seeing where the $100,000 is going. I have come to the conclusion that no one on this board has that information, neither does anyone in our administration. The original thought to reduce Kemper Center donation by $5,000 was called mudslinging, and it's been said Kemper Center's doing a good job. We can all agree Kemper Center's a beautiful place on the lakefront property, but to say that they're doing a great job and have not yet provided where this $100,000 is going year after year, we are not a bank. We should no longer be providing steady income for this not-for-profit that we have no answers for. We need to know where the $100,000 is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this motion because I don't view this as a game other than the hide and seek that's been going on. We've been asking for information. It's not been provided. It seems the only way that we can get to the bottom of it is by restricting funds. It is a beautiful venue. There are many fine events that are held there. It's a jewel within the park system, but there's some accountability here that's lacking, and that's why I'm supporting this motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kemper Center was not 20 years ago, it was 1976. I'm old enough to have been on the board and supported it 100% back then, and I support it 100% right now. And if you can't figure out where that $100,000 goes, look at their budget. $80,000, pointed out tonight, went for utility bills. If we if we take this out, we're not only throwing a slap in the face at Kemper, they're throwing a slap in the face of all those people that I attend meetings with, and I've reported back to this board when there were no problems. The reason you never got a report is because there were no problems. There were none. Not until this thing came with Sophisticatering, who, by the way, just said tonight that they have, 3 events for the rest of this year? This is just an attempt of somebody. I don't want to accuse anybody, but somebody else is trying to, I think, run Kemper, quite frankly. You can't contract with a private firm to run a public park. You can contract with a nonprofit agency to run a park, which is what we did in 1976. Come on, let's get real here. They provide for the community, and I can't even name them all. They're a very good group of people who put in a lot of time, and this is a slap in the face, period. I urge you to vote this down.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I've been on the Parks Commission for a long time, Public Works, and I've heard every variety of excuse for and against the Kemper subsidy we pay. And a subsidy really is not the proper way of saying it. It's an investment in our infrastructure. We are landlords. We basically own the property. We have someone else manage it for us, and we try to do it in the best, most cost-effective way. So if there is a budget annually of $800,000 and the county contributes $150,000 towards that, and you know that the expenses, if you look at your spreadsheet here, your charts, $65,000, $75,000 per year in utilities. You don't have to be a math wizard to understand where that $100,000 goes. I don't think it's a difficult concept. But we do have our naysayers, our boo birds that want to perpetually, for one reason or another, withdraw funding from Kemper. So my question to you is, makers of these proposals, what is your substitute? We will still have to manage this property. We'll still have to keep it up. What is your plan going forward when you cut $100,000? I have not heard one iota of plan over these past 10 years, but I've heard cut this, cut that. So I think that's about as concise as I can say it. I would not support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
There were some things mentioned on the floor that prove Supervisor Gilmore's point. One supervisor says that the cost of utilities is $80,000, and another one says it's between $65,000 and $67,000. Which one is it? Oh, we don't know. They won't show us their accounting. I sent an email last night after hearing them speak and asked them for their annual reports and also an itemized listing, or actually their checkbook register, of where our money goes. I got the annual reports. I asked again. Mr. Gronke didn't even mention a listing of where our money goes, the taxpayer money. When I say our money, I mean the taxpayer, my constituents' money. He ignored it, didn't even answer, didn't even comment on it. I replied to it. Thank you for the annual reports. Can you please give me a listing of where our money goes? He said it's in the annual reports. No, I want an itemized listing of where that money goes. When we're saying utility bills are $65,000 to $67,000 or $80,000, that's a big difference. So we don't exactly know how much the utilities are. Where are they spending this money? And when someone says, what would we do? How about we get some people in there that run it professionally and actually make money? Kenosha County has very few venues that can hold up to 150 people. I have a fundraiser for the group I work with. It's over 150 people. We are very limited to where we can go. Kemper is one of them. Why are they not making money when there is such a small group of places that can hold that many people? They should be booked weekend after weekend after weekend. We need to get better management in there, run this like a business. Some supervisors might want to travel west of Sheridan Road to see that there are venues that can host weddings and concerts and things like that. Kemper's a great place, but it needs to be run better so we do not have to subsidize it. That is why we are in a private partnership, so we do not have to subsidize it. If it was run more effectively, more efficiently, and promoted better, it wouldn't need the subsidy. But everyone's okay with the way it is because it's only $100,000. Well, it's funny how we're first told that there's no expenses. We only spend it on capital improvements. The $100,000 was for capital improvements, we were told. Now we're being told that it's for operating expenses. The answers are always changing. And when your answers are changing, that means people are scrambling to cover something up. That's why I'm in favor of removing this money.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Bostrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As one of the people on the committee that supported the $5,000 reduction in the donation, I can certainly tell you my intention was not to sling mud or drag anybody's good name through the mud. My intention was more of a symbolic challenge. $5,000 really is not going to move the needle on a budget that size. But it was more of a symbolic challenge to those that operate Kemper to start thinking how they're going to find other revenue sources. And what I heard this evening and a little bit last night, it sounds like some of those discussions have been taking place. And I don't know if they were prompted to do so by some of the things that had been occurring over this last summer or some of the discussions that we've been having. Whatever the reason is, I'm glad they're having those discussions. That said, I'm not going to support the 100% removal of the donation or the subsidy or whatever it is that we're going to call it for some of the reasons that was articulated here by some of the other supervisors, is that without that subsidy or without Kemper Center Inc., what is to be done? And I understand that there's been some passion pleas to look for other operators or more professional operators. You know, maybe they're out there, maybe they're not. I have a little bit of experience with this in my previous job with the city with another historic building in Lake Michigan, the Southport Beach House. And I can tell you, it's not as easy as you think to try to find another public-private partnership to operate a building, even if it's for free, even if you're willing to fully fund it. It's not that easy. These folks have experience. They've been operating it for a number of years. Could it be operated better? Yeah, I'm sure it can be. Should we have more oversight into how our money gets spent? Absolutely. So I think the message that needs to be sent, and I hope we are sending it, and I hope it's being heard, that this body, or at least some members of this body, want to have more involvement, or at least want to have a little more oversight, or at least a little more communication with how our money is being spent. I hope it's being spent appropriately. I hope it's being spent wisely. And I hope Kemper Center is wildly successful moving into 2017 and beyond. So while I won't support the 100% removal of this subsidy in 2016, next year, if it doesn't get significantly better, I might. And I suspect there's others here that might as well. So that's the message I want to get across. Not slinging mud, but I need to be a responsible steward of taxpayer, of the people that I represent. And I think this is a very reasonable thing to be asking for. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Elverman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, I've had the good fortune of being involved in many committees since I've been on the county board, but my biggest and what has brought me the most joy in being here has been being involved with Public Works and the parks. we have such a long history. The latest park that we've added to our repertoire was the KD Park, and when we did that, bought that property, it was, you know, an open slate, bare, and we had no real plans for it. Well, in talking to the community, they wanted ballparks, they wanted tennis courts, they wanted football fields, all these different things that you want in parks, but we had those things, so we put together a plan and we enhanced other parks. In a partnership with the Lakeland Little League, we did the ball fields over at Brightondale. That's another park that a lot of people don't remember we have. They think of it as just a golf course. But that's where we have our state-of-the-art ball fields. Fox River Park, the youth football people play there, and we have soccer. The cross-country teams from the high schools work there. And there's an element of nature there. Silver Lake Park, Paddock Lake Park, those are our beaches. And the Katy Park has become actually our passive park with the nature trails and the dog walking and the viewing that people do out there. Bristol Woods, we have a partnership with the Pringle Nature Center. We don't have to have that, but we offer, I'm a little lengthier, but we offer these things as a quality of life for our citizens and ourselves. Kemper was something that fell into the lap of Kenosha County because of the passion that people had for the property that had actually gone to school there, and the good citizens that live around it. The volunteers, you could never put a dollar figure on that when people are sitting here putting dollar figures on things. So when we do look at employees, Supervisor Rose, everyone has said just about what can be said, but we could not afford to offer that quality or that venue. The county just couldn't afford to do it. So between the Rotary Club, all these people have been left out, people that were involved in all the construction, all the building, all the money raising out there. We just wouldn't have it. We wouldn't have that park. I was amazed, I said to Supervisor Gens when we were doing citizens' comments here, I said, this is really sad. No one is talking about anything on the budget, anything else on the budget but Kemper Center. It's very joyful because it's mostly good comments. People with a passion for that park. You have to remember, that's one of our parks. And what do you give to your society? What do you leave for your children? That's what you do. So the passion that the people have that run it is why it's there. I believe that all this debate has come upon us because there was a feeling by members on this board to want to cut something, and Kemper is the lowest hanging fruit. Kemper had some adversity this summer, a lot of publicity with the one caterer. So that brought it all out. There's a good spot, and there's blood in the water. Now, the sheriff is in the room here this evening, and don't take this wrong, Sheriff Beth, but I had somebody that worked for me say, I saw your name on a plaque in Kenosha. And I said, where? And he said, at the detention center. I said, oh. Well, I was on the county board when we built that, and my name's on a plaque. Well, my name's on a plaque at the Kemper Center, and it's way over in the corner on one of the trees that fell down when that horrible storm went through and the things needed to be rebuilt, and everybody got together and did that. So the Sheriff's Department is a vital part of our community. Don't really appreciate my name on that plaque as much as I do on these other venues that we have. Another item I'm getting to, and speaking about the sheriff, is anything that I've heard of has talked about, and God knows we need it, but the largest budget we have, $40 million, is the Sheriff's Department. and we're going after this little county park that has about 100 volunteers that are running it for us for $150,000 a year. I don't understand it. I certainly won't support this. And I hope no one, I'm sure some are going to, but I hope the majority of us don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alverman. Supervisor Gilmore, you have the floor.
Thank you.
State your point.
According to Robert's rules, I believe that on a singular motion that the speaker is allowed to speak.
Oh, that is correct. You've been overruled. Okay. I'm going to clear this again. I see a lot of lights, but I'm not sure if they're still valid. If anyone else wants to speak. Supervisor Hallman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of our new freshman colleagues thought I should say something. I'm not in favor with the complete removal of the funds for Kemper. I had heard in the Finance Committee as I sat and I listened about the removal, I believe it was $5,000, which sounded wise, only because I know that we have had here as part of our ethos, part of the goal to get things that we deem not critical, essential county functions off of the levy as much as possible to the best of our ability while still preserving their integrity. It seemed wise to send the message to say, look at it, consider it, figure a way out, to build a runway for folks to figure out how to take off in their own plane and not rely solely on us. Sorry, I have allergies, so it's hard to talk. I will say, I feel a little bad. I think I'm the only one among all of you who arranges music, composes, conducts. I actually have my flute sitting in a case underneath this desk, one instrument out of 7 that I play, and I've never set foot in the Anderson Arts Center. I've been busy. I've had other things. But the one thing I will say before I close my remarks on this is that I will say this. I sit on the National Association of Counties Arts and Culture Commission, and I don't think all of you recognize the power that you have with Kemper in your possession. And part of it is my doing. I will admit that. I failed in cultivating a vision for what this could be, because what we invest is $100,000 out of $800,000 total from other, the other $700,000 coming from other places, could be so much greater of an impact. And so I think, should we send a tiny message to say to Kemper, look at potentially doing what you can so that we can provide less levy? Yes. But in doing so, we must also do our own policy homework to make sure that what the things that we do with the relationship that we have with Kemper, with Anderson Arts Center, can actually grow and be a bigger flower than it already is. Part of that work is mine, and part of that work is also on the rest of the shoulders of the people in this room on this county board. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Seeing no other lights. So yes, if you're in favor of removing it, no if you are not. Motion fails. Supervisor Wamble, you have the floor.
Thank you. I did not support removing the $100,000 because I believe in taking my time and doing my due diligence. I feel personally I just needed more time. With that said, though, I am proposing that we reduce the $100,000 Kemper Center donation by the 5% to $95,000 like I originally proposed. Back on Facilities and Public Works, that committee, it passed unanimously. When it reached the Finance Committee, the 5% was put back in by a 4-3 vote. And at that time, a couple of supervisors spoke. One stated that the 5% cut was because we were just looking for something to cut. That was brought up again tonight. That is simply not true. That is not why I made that motion. Another supervisor spoke, you heard it again tonight, and said we were slinging mud. Again, I took offense to that. That is not true. I very much appreciate everyone speaking on this topic today and yesterday, both the pros and cons. Debate is good, as was mentioned. I appreciate all the volunteers. I like Kemper. I think they're doing an okay job, but there's areas that can be improved on. So I want to just be clear. I made that proposed 5% cut because I have personal experience through another organization with Kemper. Okay? This is not about the catering issue or changing the general concept of how Kemper and the Anderson Arts Center is run, as the volunteers mentioned. I appreciate them very much. I have no animosity towards them, and as Supervisor Bostrom said, I want them to succeed as well. And if you think about it, wouldn't it be great, like it was mentioned before, if that $100,000 donation could be completely taken off, of the taxpayers because they're doing so well? Shouldn't that be our goal? So, like I said, I have no animosity towards them. In fact, I had a very nice conversation with Gary Grenke after the finance meeting last week, and even today we talked, and we decided we're going to work together. I believe I can offer some assistance, and that's how it should be. We should be helping each other. But I will continue to work on behalf of the taxpayer to make sure we are doing what is in their best interest. So, and in fact, one of the second to last volunteers that spoke kind of made my point. She said she sees more potential with Kemper Center. Well, so do I. That's why I want to make this proposal of $5,000. It's not a lot of money, but I think they can do better. Let's do better. Let's make it so we reduce that $100,000 to nothing because they don't need it. Wouldn't that be good for the taxpayers?
No.
Okay, well, I am motioning then, okay, my apologies, I thought I said that originally. I am proposing or motioning to reduce the donation of $100,000 we're giving to Kemper by 5%.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Supervisor Decker. Yeah. Thank you, Supervisor Wambold. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Again, what is the purpose of this? If you don't, these people could walk away from this. They could say, well, you think you can do it better? Do it. And what would we have to do? We have to start hiring administration and secretaries and grounds people and program people and doing all the things that they are doing. Do you think those volunteers would stand by after listening to our debate this evening? What is the message that you are sending here with your $5,000 cut? It's more than a $5,000 message. It seems to be the message that you're not doing very well, volunteers and your staff, so we're going to cut you, and you call this a donation. No, I don't call this a donation. I call this a joint enterprise here to operate a government park cheaper than we could operate it. We subsidized for years the golf course. We subsidized, and I don't even play golf, and I supported that subsidy. And we argued and argued about what a positive thing golf was, and finally they have now, most recently, been profitable. They were breaking even, and now they're showing a small profit. All we were asking for was that they pay their fair share. The golfers, that is, pay their fair share, not us non-golfers. But there were some of us who felt that, and I just continue to support that deficit here by adding money to it, because I thought it was a positive thing for the community, even though I didn't participate in golf. And I support the $19 million for the bonding for Highway S, which is in Supervisor Skalitsky's district, and which is partially in Summers in Supervisor Retzloff's district, because it's good for the community. That's why, not just because it happens to be, well, I could say, I'm never going to use Highway S. My people who live on the lakefront, we use Kemper, but we don't use Highway S, so we're not going to support Highway S. No. I view this $5,000 as mudslinging. I view it as unwarranted criticism. I view it as, frankly, very petty on the part of us. If you want to make suggestions for why you think something should be better there, fine. I'm not against that. But why are we spending so much time, here it is 8:25, when there are $46 million of bonding issues? Are you familiar with the fact that we're going to be spending $1.7 million on a motor vehicle building for sheriff's vehicles? I mean, you could debate that as we did in the Finance Committee for some time. That's $1.7 million. We could debate $19 million for Highway S. We could debate $450,000 for courtroom renovation. And there are many other things that we could debate of far more significance than $5,000 here, $5,000.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. I still have lights on the board. Okay.
I think we've
All
kicked
right.
this around
Supervisor
enough.
Ron Frederick.
I said I called for the question, and I had a second.
Yeah. He
Now
can.
tell me the rules don't say we have to vote.
Right. Right. We have to vote. Oh. You have to wait your turn. That's what I thought. That's why I said.
You have to vote on whether we
Right.
call it a question.
Joe.
The motion to call the question requires being recognized by the chair. It cannot simply be called out and moved on. I now leave it to the chair to determine who is in order, but you can't just call it out and move to a vote on whether the question is being called.
Right. And that is why I said there were other people on the board that need to be recognized. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I attended the Public Works Committee meeting where this was debated, and I agreed with their decision. And I think with all the smoke there at Kemper, we really need to send a message, and this decrease will send that message. And I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Gable, you have the floor.
I call the question.
Second.
Who said second over here? I have a second by Supervisor Rose. All right, we're going to vote on calling the question. Requires 2/3 vote. Yes if you're in favor of vote closing it. No if you're not. What is that? It's 2/3. Okay. Motion passes to close. All right, hold on. Okay, the motion is to decrease the budget by $5,000. Yes if you're in favor, no if you're against. How many? It passes? Yep. Oh, it fails? Oh. Motion fails. Okay. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully we can move on to much larger discussions regarding the budget in front of us. I received an email from a constituent of mine, and I want to read it to everybody here, because it seems to be a reoccurring theme that we We as representatives of the taxpayers have a fiduciary responsibility for our constituents. But we go to the administration, ask them what the budget will be. It's presented. We add that to a resolution that's non-binding, and magically the budget passes at that number. It gets a little bit frustrating from year to year without challenging the administration to look for ways to be more efficient, to cut spending, and to reduce the burden upon our constituency. Dear Supervisor Skolitsky, as a constituent in your district, I would like to extend my opposition to an increase in county taxes. In an environment where people are unemployed or at most not receiving cost of living or salary increases, a tax increase is painful. We are forced to cut back to make ends meet. Why can't the county do the same? I thought that was an excellent but very succinct email about what's been going on. Many constituents in every one of your districts have not seen increases in their salaries, or perhaps don't have employment at all. And yet every year we expect them to reach back into their pockets, and we hide behind these facades of, oh, we've got so much growth, we have to invest. Well, much of that investment is just more spending. Rather than looking at what is needed, we also add on many wants. And yet, many of our constituents have to sit and go without in order to pay the taxes, because the tax burden in the state of Wisconsin overall is very high. Another email that I was copied on came from one of our former supervisors, Supervisor Noble. And I thought it was a very insightful email. So what he said was, good morning, as you know, and he had been doing this, as you know, I've been advocating for a concept for Kenosha County called spousal carve-out as a method to save taxpayers money for at least 10 years. I implemented it where I worked about 15 to 20 years ago. I'm bringing it up because just this morning I found out that Racine Unified adopted the spousal carve-out for their 2017 budget. In short, the concept is as follows. If the spouse of a county employee has insurance offered at their place of employment, then the spouse must get his/her insurance from his/her employer, basically carved out, and every employer pays for their own. Now that an entity in the public sector has finally adopted the concept, I thought Kenosha County might consider the concept. That would save millions of tax dollars over the years. From my own personal perspective, that's exactly how it is at my employer. If your spouse, significant other, domestic partner, whatever the case may be, is offered insurance through their employer, they must take it. And if not, you're required to submit an affidavit indicating that it's not offered, and thus then you can seek your health care coverage through, in my case, my wife takes it through my company, or in the case of the county, you could get it through them. In an effort, and we have been asked as a board to go out and do numerous compensation studies, and as a result of those studies have come out and adjusted salaries of county employees. But we seem to only focus in on salaries. Compensation is based on salary and benefits. But we have done nothing to address that, or very little, considering the many tools that are out there for us to adopt. The health care coverage that's offered to the Kenosha County employees is substantially more beneficial. I hate to use the term lucrative, but it is substantially better than anything that I've experienced in the private sector. As a result of these new insights and an effort to control the ever-increasing spending by this administration and increasing taxes, I am making a motion to add to this budget the spousal exclusion or carve-out that functions as was described by former County Supervisor Noble. and I would seek your support of this motion for this year's budget. It is time that we start bringing not only salary, but benefits in line with the private sector.
Right.
And I would appreciate when I'm speaking that I can have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Rose, you have the floor. That was by Supervisor Zucker.
Just point of clarification, is there a motion on the floor?
Yes.
All right. Let me just respond to the proposal, which here I understand is made in good faith, but let's talk about facts. And I've said some of these facts at the beginning of this meeting. If you had a $100,000 home in 2016 and you have that same $100,000 home that you live in 2017, your tax goes down. It goes from $5.12 per thousand to $5.05. Not a lot of money, but let's set the record straight. It goes down. In 2008, bonding, long-term debt, $218 million. In 2017, with new debt added to it, it's $185 million. We're going down. Let's let the record straight about Racine County and what they did do. It's not exactly the way you've described it, because I looked into it. And what happens is that, yes, your Racine County people, their insurance becomes secondary and the spouse's insurance becomes primary. That's a little different than just carving it all out. Supervisor Noble had proposed this on a number of occasions. He spoke to this issue. Keeping in mind, however, that Supervisor Noble himself was covered by, when he was married, by his wife's insurance, and she was a Brookside employee. And I think that needs to be said and laid out there. That's the truth of the matter, which I think colors the discussion quite a bit. So in the 11th hour, he makes this proposal, which hasn't really been studied and carefully considered. What does the 2017 budget have to say about health insurance? Are you aware? Have you studied it and informed your constituents that employees will make $1 million more in additional contributions to the health insurance? And where do they come from? It averages out to $1,000 per employee, a cost increase overall of 8%. And how do we get there? Well, if you remember, the wellness program determines how much employee contributions are. And last year, we've had 1% to 10%. 2017, 2% to 15%. What happens if you go to the hospital? Were you aware of this? And I hope you go back and tell your constituents this, because what we've been paying for, what an employee has been paying if they go to the hospital and they get the bill, $350 total. They stay there 10 days, it's $350. What about 2017? $350 per day. That's the fact. So these are substantial contributions that employees are now making. What about if your employee is smoking? If that employee smokes, there's a $100 per family surcharge. If it's single, it's $40. So we're addressing that. So there are these plan design changes. Perhaps you weren't aware of that and just thought, well, we're just adding more benefits and charging the same thing and passing it along to the taxpayer. That's just not the case. What about the Sheriff's Department? Let's keep in mind that the Sheriff's Department is a union contract. We have to negotiate that. And if we want to deal with the Sheriff's Department here and have the spousal carve-out, as you're suggesting, how are we going to deal with the Sheriff's Department? We can't just impose it. We've got to open up the union contract. You think they're just going to open it up and start negotiating? No cost? I'm not that naive. There's going to be a cost to that, opening up that contract. If you want that spousal, that's carve-out. I mean, it's fine to say, read a letter from your constituents. I'm all for
cutting it, but we are. And let's not overlook it. And let's not put ourselves into a box where we're opening up a union contract. And now on the table, we've got all kinds of issues that we didn't anticipate because you're advocating a spousal carve-out here. There are substantial savings in this agreement. In this current health care proposal. I've tried to point them out, the major points here, and it all comes down to $1,000 per person. So go back to your constituents and say, respectfully, that's not the fact.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've spent hours on this health plan, and I'm involved in that. And first of all, almost all employer groups have spouse carve-outs, all of them. It's been going on for years. So to say that's something new or different because we've seen unified school districts doing is not that. Right now I am hesitant, though, to jump on this because I think we need to get a report to see what the money looks like. Supervisor Rose, I could not disagree with you more about this health plans. They still have a health plan that no one else has. No one has. We are making baby steps towards the contributions that they're going to be making. It's a start, a very, very, very small start. So don't even think of going there about how awful this is going to be for the little contributions that they make towards this health plan. Because if you did and you went to any of your constituents and you compared their plan to theirs that they have to work, they would say, you got to be kidding. So please don't do that. But I have spent time with the administration. It is heading in the right direction. I agree with where the funding rates came from this. We worked with the claims, or with the consultants. I am content there. We can always argue about more contributions, and I'm hesitant, but yet I'm supportive of where we're starting with this. We need to put this in at some point. It may be next year. I think this year it may be a little early. There's some open enrollment period considerations that other employer groups have that we may want to be a little cognizant of. But to go around and think that our employees are being suffered is just ludicrous. And it makes me upset that people do not have any clue about this health plan. None. If they did, they'd be saying, I don't know, they'd be praising this beyond belief, because it is. So, Madam Chair, I agree with it, but I'm not going to support this year. And I've asked Mr. Gertzen or Mr. Riedel to get a report so that we can all look at what we're talking about. And we can coordinate that with other employer plans. It's a carve-out, but it does coordinate with the deductibles. We could work that way. But we need to address this health insurance. It's running away from us. We are taking some slight steps. Madam Chair, you and I talked about this, and I agree with that, but this thing is a runaway freight train if we don't start making some big-time moves on this, because next year this thing's going to look like, I don't know, it's going to be horrible. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can understand the maker of the motion, what he's trying to accomplish, the reduction in payouts we'd have to do for employees and so forth. But my concern is, why does it come up at this particular late date and time? Isn't this something that goes through the committee system? Isn't this something you have a discussion with your personnel director? Isn't this something that you basically figure out every last little detail before you present it? I don't even think we have a dollar amount if this would save us money and how much. So here we are at the 11th hour, asked to vote on a proposal. We don't even have the facts in front of us. Now, is that fiscally responsible? Is that what we were elected to do by our citizenry? I don't think so. So I would like to see this investigated. I mean, it's been on the table before. Circumstances have changed. But this is not the time and place for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
I'm in favor of this, and for a supervisor disparage another supervisor for taking the health insurance when his wife was an employee when we didn't have an employee carve-out is quite hypocritical, because if we did have an employee carve-out, he wouldn't have been taking the insurance. That proves the point. And to complain that someone in a hospital has to pay $350 a day when my children go to the hospital, or when I go to the hospital or the emergency room, I have to pay $6,600. That is my deductible, and plus my co-insurance. $6,600. As a small business owner, that is what I have to pay per year. My husband goes to the hospital. My daughter goes to the hospital. Look at that. $13,200 I have to pay as a small business owner. And it's not just because I'm a small business owner. It's because I don't work in government. Many people that are in the private sector have the same insurance. And I don't believe anyone that is on the county health insurance plan should be debating anything about the county health insurance. It's quite the conflict of interest, in my opinion. And to bring up the sheriff's department, they're on a separate insurance plan. Because of Act 10, they are, the way we negotiate, they are on a different health insurance plan. So that's a completely separate issue. To bring that up is just, unbelievable that he doesn't even know that the sheriff's department is on a different health insurance plan. The finance chair doesn't know that? Or is he just bringing that up to scare people? $1 million, that's what the changes to our health insurance plan is supposed to save, or I'm sorry, it's going to cost employees more, $1 million more a year. If you look at the sheet that's handed out, let me find it, sorry. The health insurance deficit, $1,411,998. So it's costing our employees $1 million more, but last year our deficit was $1.4 million. So we're still in the hole. The changes we made, and we are still in the hole. We should have at least made changes so we break even from last year. That would have made sense. So right now we're starting out $400,000 in the hole in this budget. And that doesn't, that's not any other wild expenses that we might have for health insurance. $400,000, we're already in the hole. We're voting $400,000 in the hole. That's what we're supporting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. When I first ran for this county board about 6 years ago, I ran on a platform of eliminating health insurance for county board supervisors. Well, I had to go 2 resolutions because the first one died, and some of the supervisors who came on with me, and one of them who just spoke, was quick to sign up for that $23,000 family plan as soon as it happened. I say that because that's hypocritical for her to talk about health insurance. She went to the taxpayers and took a $23,000 health insurance policy, which we finally eliminated. And if that's a personal shot, yes, it is. Because it's hypocritical for her to talk about health insurance.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right. I think the point here needs to be taken about the item health insurance deficit, and you'll see that on the sheet of paper here, and I think it's worth mentioning. It's $1,411,998, item causing decrease to the general fund. Well, unfortunately, in this past year, there have been a number of people who have cancer. There have been transplants. These are highly expensive, unexpected things. We also have an employee population that is growing older. So that's, you don't know how many people are going to have cancer or transplants, very serious things like that. It happens, and it's going to cause a deficit in the health insurance. So hopefully that isn't going to happen in the future. The compensation study was mentioned, and if you remember that compensation study, and I think it was pretty much, if I recall, supported unanimously by the board, but I defer if you want to check the minutes, but that's my recollection, showed that actually, contrary perhaps to common, what is sort of common wisdom, that county employees are paid more than private sector. If you asked the general public, they would probably say, yes, that's true, that's true. The study didn't show that. Actually, the study surprisingly showed us below the private sector, and when we addressed that issue, we didn't suddenly make it higher than the private sector. We bumped some people up. Third point is this, that in the future, I think we're going to see a labor shortage here. We're going to see some substantial competition for qualified people. And when they take a look at, do I go to the private sector with this benefit or that benefit? Do I go to work at Uline or do I go to work for Kenosha County? To have a good package here is important. And when they compare salary for salary, I think you're going to find that the private sector is better and that there are more benefits. So I don't think that people are getting rich here. I think that people are doing a good job and they're being compensated. But I don't want the general public to somehow think that this is a rich employment here. The community, I understand, has lost a lot of high-paying jobs. We've tried to address that as best we can through the economic development. But I just don't want to think we need to jump on the bandwagon and ask employees here to take more cuts. We're asking them to take cuts right here with what I mentioned before, and we've asked them to take cuts in the past here, and we've debated that as well. So keep that in mind when you cast your vote tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no other lights, we're going to take a roll call on this. Yes, if you want the spousal carve-out. No, if you do not. Motion fails. So noted. Okay. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
I would move the previous question.
Question has been called. I have a second. By Supervisor Cable.
Voting on the budget.
Yes.
Okay, I have to make a statement here before we vote on the budget, please.
Okay. State.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to state that I'm in full favor of the overall 2017 budget resolution, and I intend to vote for passage of the resolution. I'm aware that there could be a perceived conflict of interest on my part related to those parts of the budget which concern the personal budget and the particular changes to the insurance coverage, but I'm also aware of my responsibility to my constituents to participate in what is likely to be my most important vote that we take this year. Accordingly, after consultation with Corporation Counsel, I will abstain from debating or voting on any amendments related to the insurance coverage, and I'd ask that my clerk to note that my vote in favor of the budget resolution includes an absenteeism from voting on that portion of the budget. I appreciate your consideration in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kubicki. Vice Chair Esposito.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would also like to concur with what Supervisor Kubicki said for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Esposito. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor. Are
we discussing the budget, Madam Chair, the passage? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a motion on the floor, though.
I've torn between.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, I didn't understand. You didn't explain it to me. Sorry.
We're voting on the budget.
We are voting on the budget.
Close debate.
I wish to make a similar statement as to what Supervisor Kubicki and Esposito have made, with the abstention.
We're voting on closing debate.
Yes.
So no one needs to abstain on
Right.
closing debate.
Right.
It's not, though. He's concurring with what Ed said, correct?
Correct.
With the insurance or debate.
Okay, are we ready? Okay. Ready for the vote? Okay. Yes, if you're in favor of closing debate. No, if you are not in favor of closing debate. It's not working. There we go.
13 to 10. 13 yes, closed debate.
Okay. Debate has been closed. No? 2/3. Motion fails.
2/3.
2/3, yeah. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
You know, for those that want to get home to the Cubs game, I apologize. They're done. So, you know, they already won the series. So,
I heard that.
yeah, I know some of you guys wanted to leave during our meeting to get to see that. I spent a lot of time on this budget, and I have mixed feelings. I am going to support it. That's my final decision, but it comes with some hesitation, I'll admit. I don't know why they need $1.7 million. I don't know why. I've looked at everything. It's insignificant, in my opinion, either side. It's a very small levy increase. I agree. Why are we doing it? I am totally convinced that our administration could pencil whip $1.7 million out of this budget without blinking an eye. If you look at prior years, they missed it in 15 by they had $5 million. We had more revenue than predicted, and we had $4 million more in expenses. That's a delta of $9 million. 1.7 is very small. That point is, as Mr. Rose said last night, this is an educated guess. Brookside is going to have about a $2 million budget deficit after the payment of the bonds next year. I was told from the administration, we pay it, but it won't come out of our general fund, because we convert Brookside to some type of account. It's a building account, and we have magical T-bill accounts that can account for that, so it doesn't matter. We can absorb that loss. Well, I have taxpayers that can't absorb some of the losses when we ask for more taxes. Being said, I think the budget is good, though. I appreciate a lot of things that Mr. Rose did say, and the administration says we are accomplishing a lot of goals. I could honestly flip a coin. Because it's $1.7 million, it's going to cost an average taxpayer about $5, $10, you know, more. It's not anything. Why they put it in? Why can't we absorb the 1.7? I don't know. But I don't know if it's worth that much of a discussion. That's my feeling on this budget. Is it is good, but I have no idea why they just didn't say, guys, we can do it at zero, label as a goodwill towards our taxpayers. At the end of the year, we're not going to notice this 1.7 because it's going to be lost or made up in lost revenues, overgain revenue, county tax that we underestimated, health insurance expenses that we are guessing at, etc. So I think people need to consider that, but I will admit I'm going to support it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Retzloff brings up a great point. $1.7 million, couldn't find a way to just absorb it. It's a rounding error practically. But when I see $3 million of unspent levy going to the general fund, I know there's an awful lot of fluff in this budget. And I look back and I say, I just don't see enough effort by either the administration or the various committees that reviewed this budget to try to challenge some of the spending that's being proposed so that we could give the taxpayers a break. It's real easy to say, oh, it's only $5 or $10, $15, whatever the case may be, until it's you have to pay your tax bill, or maybe you can't buy your kid a new pair of shoes for school, or treat them to a meal out once in a while. I take this very seriously, and I am seriously looking to find ways to reduce the tax burden on the taxpayers of Wisconsin. It isn't just the county. I think that the administration does a very effective job at trying to control spending, looking for new ways to be more efficient. But if you look at the overall tax burden, it's very, very substantial. In some families, it's overwhelming. We should be looking to find ways to set the example for other bodies around us to reduce spending. Look at the county, look what they're doing. Why can't we be more diligent with the massive amounts of money that we take from taxpayers in other entities? The vast majority of my tax bill comes out of school district, and I don't think they're anywhere near efficient enough. So, unlike Supervisor Retzloff, I do not support this budget and will not be supporting it because I don't think enough effort was made by the administration or by the various committees, including the Finance Committee, to bring this levy down to 0 or less and to give the Kenosha County taxpayers a break for once in a while. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
Yes, I have some questions, and it pertains to bonding / the budget, so I want to bring it up now just because before we vote on the budget. Supervisor Rose talked about the bonding, that it's at $46 million approximately. But when I look at the amount that is bonded or budgeted for bonding, it's $18.995 million. I'd like to know why there's a discrepancy in those two numbers. I don't know if the chair of the Finance Committee can answer that, or maybe Mr. Geertsen or whomever.
Well, you have the budget resolutions before you, and you have to realize that this is an annualized amount. So we're authorizing in our first resolution, for example, $11,585,000 payable over 10 years. 1962 is $19,630,000 over 20 years, and the $12,050,000 over 20 years, and then you have another resolution at $3,075,000 again 20 years. So I think the answer is that this is what is authorized this year, and some of this will continue in other budgets forthcoming.
Is that correct through or to the Mr. Geertsen?
Oh, you are.
Of the committee chair were accurate. I could add that we are authorizing $46 million of projects. Over time, we aren't going to spend that much in 2017. Some of those projects will take as much as 3 to 5 years. So for example, the Highway S project will take several years to do. So we're authorizing the project up front so we can do the project and let contracts, but we will not spend that amount in year one. They'll be spent over many years. So.
Have we done that in the past ever?
Many times in the past. It's a common thing. We've done it many times. So.
Like, can you give me an example?
I sent an email to Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Skalitsky, can you remember some of the examples I gave in the email? Okay. Okay, in 2010 we authorized, I think, $15 million of highway projects, and that was to be done over several years. And so, for example, the example I gave when I got the same question was in 2012 we drew from that and spent a portion of that on highway projects, but still had a balance remaining. So that's one example. But we've done it a multitude of times. It's a common thing that we do. And the reason we do it is so that we don't build a bridge to nowhere. We want to get the project approved. We want to let you know up front. We want to be transparent. We want to let you know how much it's going to cost. So it's a form of transparency and honesty. But we also, if you do agree that you want to do that project and it's a good project, again, I think Highway S is a good example to use here. Then we can, get the project done. We can apply for whatever revenues that will come back to fund it. In Highway S, we're going to get about $5 million of revenue. We can let the projects get the whole scope done by the right-of-way. That's an example of why we do that. But yes, that's something we've done many times.
And so we bond for the full amount, but then it takes us 5 years to spend it. So we're paying interest on it, or we bond?
We bond as
we issue the bond separately.
Yes.
Every year.
we would bond as we need the money. And if we end up not needing the full amount because it's a not to exceed, then we wouldn't borrow the full amount.
And, okay, and the bonding, that's fine with Ellers, and that's a common practice that Ellers...
I think I can speak for Ellers and say, yes, that's a good practice, but I'll look for their yes nods. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Geertsen. Thank you, Supervisor, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Getting back to what Supervisor Retzloff said, our general fund balance has increased 10% in 3 years, which is an average of 3% a year, which does show there is fat in these budgets. And I propose that we use 1/2 of last year's general fund increase to lower our projected levy increase in 2017 to 0. That would be 6% of the general fund, a very small amount. And it's time for the public to get some benefit for the jobs being created here. And I move to modify the budget to take the 2017 levy increase out of the general fund. Thank you.
I have a second on the motion. I'm going to clear the board, and you can turn your lights back on. On the motion, please. Supervisor Rhodes.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to speak against this motion because I think that the motion is out of order based upon the rules that govern us. And if you recall, from time to time, Finance Director has brought to the Finance Committee different policy resolutions. And Mr. Gerskin can verify this. I would ask him to speak on it as well when I'm done. But one of those policy resolutions that came to the Finance Committee and we recommended to you and you adopted it was that we couldn't just take money out of the general fund to pay ordinary and necessary budget requirements. We just can't, and this has been done many times in the past, that an executive, not this particular executive, but the executives in the past have gone to the general fund and balanced the budget by taking general fund revenues and subtracting that, and made it look like there was a revenue decrease. And we adopted a resolution prohibiting that because we thought that gave us better stability and continuity, as I said, in making our presentation to the bonding agencies, urging them to upgrade our bond rating, and they've accepted that. Now, what are we going to do when we make that presentation the next time and we say, well, we took $1.7 million out of the general reserves because we wanted to reduce the levy here, and we thought there was fat in the budget. I guess that's what the proposition is. I'm not suggesting that at all, but I think that's what the underlying proposition is, and that we paid for it by taking money out of the general fund, and thus we reduced the overall percentage, which we've been previous year we're bragging about at 29%, but this year we're overlooking that point. So I don't think that's a responsible way of doing it. If you want to cut the $1.7 million, then come up with some proposals to do so, and we'll vote them up or down. But to say on the one hand, well, the budget expenditures is all right, we just don't like the levy and therefore we're going to cut it, that doesn't make any sense. But my point of order here, and I'd ask for a legal opinion on this, it would seem to me that if we have a policy resolution the board adopts and says you can't do that, you first have to change the policy resolution before you do something contrary to the policy resolution. Wrong order. And that's why I would suggest to the chair that the motion be ruled out of order because it's contrary to our rules.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Joe, do you want to speak on that?
I think Supervisor Rose's point is well taken, and obviously Mr. Geertsen can speak to this. I don't have the policy in front of me. However, if that is in fact what the policy says, then I think it would require a vote of the board to amend or rescind that policy.
Mr. Geertsen?
I can confirm that this would be a violation of the county board adopted policy, the reserve policy. This would violate that policy.
Thank you. Motion is out of order. Seeing no other lights. Yes, if you're voting for the budget. No, if you are against it. Yep.
19 to 4.
Passes. Budget passes. Clerk owes you. Clerk owes you.
Move on.
Yep. Okay, we're going to move on to the bonds.
New business resolution 61 from the Finance and Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance not to exceed $11,585,000 general obligation promissory notes for budgeted capital projects, including road and highway improvements. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Getz, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, I would move resolution number 61 on behalf of the committee.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Gantz. Supervisor Rose.
All right, this is a whole laundry list of items which you will find in the capital budget. It's entitled Kenosha County 5-Year Capital Outlay Project Plan. And it includes such things as countywide computer and telecommunications, $2,573,910. It includes $36,000 for mapping program. Bed replacements at Brookside, $25,000. Upgrade a tracer software. Building shell for the pre-trial facility at $50,000. Replacing a highway department fuel system, $200,000. Civic center development projects, that's to purchase additional property here, near here. $300,000, $450,000 for courtrooms, the replacement of the roof at the Kenosha County Center, heating and air conditioning equipment replacements, air handling system, generator, new public safety communications tower, more replacements, pickup trucks, Kemper capital projects, which we talked about, $50,000, floodplain property, park building roof renovation replacements, crew cab pickup truck, 1-ton truck, single axle truck. It's that type of thing, and I won't finish the list here, but to say that this is you can take a look at the whole list that does add up to this $11,580,000. I urge the committee reviewed it, supported it, and we urge your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the chair of the Finance Committee, could you clarify for me how many years of authorization for bonding that this resolution is seeking?
Well, this is the first resolution. So as I understand it, if you authorize this, you are doing the first step to authorizing borrowing $11,585,000. Now, I believe this amount will be borrowed this year, and Mr. Gersten again can correct me. And these are the budgeted items that it will be done. Now, if the administration believes, for example, that one or more of these items should not be done, then they will not go to the bond market for $11,580,000. They'll go for some figure less. And then that balance, be it $1 million, $2 million, or whatever, would be carried over to the following year. But this is giving the administration the authorization to borrow that sum. Now, the board has the opportunity again, when we do go to market, to vote another time and say, no, we've changed our mind, we're not going to buy that dump truck or pave that road or whatever. But this does clearly give the direction, as it says, 5-year capital outlay for over that period of time, to in increments or in one whole sum to borrow to fulfill what you've authorized in the resolution.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Supervisor Rose. In my experience, over the 5 years that I've reviewed these budgets, I have, at least I don't recall, having a proposal for CIP spending come across, I don't want to say my desk, but our review, where we were seeking 5 years of authorization on. I do realize that the 5-year rolling or 5-year planning cycle is a continuously moving target, as it should be, because you need to project forward into what your spending is going to be. My reservation in this CIP request is not necessarily with all the projects that are listed, although some are questionable in my mind. It's the request for authorization for spending over a 5-year period. What I prefer, and the reason that I am against this CIP, is to continue the 5-year planning process, because that's critical to know the direction of our spending, but to seek authorization year by year. And my rationale behind that is simply this. I may or may not be sitting in this chair in 2 or 4 years. And by authorizing spending over 5 years, I've taken the duly elected right and responsibility away from my successor to determine whether or not this type of spending is justified. Now, I do realize, and I think everybody here does, is that that doesn't mean that all $11 million will be sought out this year. Perhaps it's $5 million this year and $2 million next year, and that's not the point. I'm not saying that the spending isn't necessarily all justified, although there's a couple that I question. I'm not willing to relinquish the duly elected right and responsibility of somebody else sitting in this chair to determine whether or not this spending is the right thing to do in their mind 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. So I won't be supporting the CIP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
I have a question for Dave. Dave, if this resolution is turned down tonight, will all those projects stop and be out of? In other words, could we still come in and borrow the money later? But are we authorizing that long-term plan? If we don't do this, actually all those projects are dead. Am I correct?
Correct. If we don't approve this initial resolution for the bonding, then we also disapprove all of the projects funded by this.
So that means that we won't be doing any highway improvements on 31 and whatever, and all that stuff is gone, right?
Anything listed relative to this.
And that would be the same for Resolution 62 and Resolution 63.
Well, each one is initially stands on its own.
62 has Highway 31, I-94, and other highway projects. So then what does that mean as far as next year, that we have a highway department that depends on these things being approved, and the only way they can get paid is if we can get federal and state money and match this? Am I correct?
We do contemplate some intergovernmental revenue to add to some of these projects, but we wouldn't be able to lever that, any of that intergovernmental money if we don't get this.
So technically, we wouldn't even have the revenue in place to keep the highway workers working, am I correct? Most of them?
It would,
Most of them?
there is some capitalized labor, so it would reduce some of the hours, but there would still be some maintenance work, quite a bit of maintenance work, snow plowing and that. But as far as any of the capital work, there wouldn't be any funding to support that.
And my point is that...
About $500,000 of capital.
And the other thing is that we're not authorizing doing it, we're just authorizing that we're going to do it in the future, and every resolution that we get on this will be acted on again.
Correct.
I mean, right? Okay.
If I'm permitted,
I heard it
that's
right.
a question. We have two more resolutions to approve.
So I guess some people on this board can vote no, and I'm expected to vote yes too, so they can go back and tell their taxpayers that they did their job and we didn't do ours. And that's what you're saying, okay? I'm done.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, Supervisor Frederick is not completely correct. This has nothing to do with shutting down the projects for next year. It simply has to do with the authorization year by year versus 5 years at a crack. That's all it is. So the CIP will need to be reformatted to bring back to our body for approval if it does not pass, and it'll simply need to go along the lines that it has for the last 5 budgets that I've been here, and that is seeking review and authorization from the board on a year-by-year basis off of the 5-year rolling plan. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
To Mr. Geertsen. Mr. Geertsen, if this resolution fails, can it be changed and brought before the floor again? Or edited?
I mean, from a finance standpoint, that could be done.
Okay, thank you.
We could
Thank
bring.
you.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not the end of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, just to respond to your successor, this issue you raised, that, well, my successor can't do anything about this, and I would disagree on that, because if you take a look at that 5-year plan sheet that I've directed your attention to, the list at the bottom of that are some of those kinds of projects that are being carried over. Now, if you decided, or your successor decided, that you didn't want to carry them over, you had a change of mind, you could always revoke those. Or if the bond sale was coming up and you had a change of mind for whatever reason, you could defeat that. So, you know, you do have a check here in the future if things go wrong. But when Mr. Gersten said, well, we don't want to build a road to nowhere, I think what is meant by that is if we authorize $1 million this year to start the road, but next year we have to put in another $2 million, but we have a change of mind, well, then you have that road to nowhere. And if you've ever driven on that Lakeshore Road down in the city of Milwaukee, and it looks like it's going into a long 4-lane highway, and suddenly you're in a neighborhood, that was probably the result of a change of heart. But that's that kind of road to nowhere that doesn't make too much sense. What you were doing here is authorizing the general proposition, but you do have a check if you change your mind in the future and feel you want to reverse yourself. There is an option.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor. This will be your last chance to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I know.
I've heard the analogy of the road to nowhere, and I think all of us sitting here realize that that was simply poor planning, not necessarily a change of heart to leave an elevated road to nowhere, sit there for many years. The point here is that we're not doing necessarily bad planning. It has to do with a change in philosophy, which I've not received what I consider justifiable rationale to go from year by year, and we don't seem to have any problems spending on major infrastructure projects, and I don't remember any not getting done or being done, especially in this robust growth period that we're going through, and a penchant of this board to invest in infrastructure and invest in the county. However, when you pass a resolution of this nature and it gives authorization, and then there's later some reservation to the issuance of the bonds, simply the passage of X years ago will be used as leverage to say, well, wait a minute, we've already given authorization, why don't you support this? So in certain circumstances, I can understand where Supervisor Rose might think that, well, your successor can say no. But it's always used as leverage from the administration. Projects that make sense, that make this a better community for us to live, to promote business growth and thus revenue growth, I don't think will ever be turned down. But some things are needs and some things are wants. And there are many of both in this CIP. It's the authorization that I don't support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Elverman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make this very simple so everybody could understand it. I'll give you one example, Highway S. Everybody's talked about it tonight. Everybody must like Highway S. Green Bay Road to the freeway. It's called 142. It's going to take us 2.5 years. This year will be, we're doing engineering and then starting some land acquisition. The state and the federal government is going to be paying about 80% of this project. They need to know ahead of time. It's not like you go to Dairy Queen and order them. They need to know ahead of time that we've approved this bonding. We're applying for money from the state and federal government over a 2.5, 3-year period to do 142. It's the largest project we've ever done. But we can't keep it a secret when we're getting the funding from the federal and the state government. So we can't just approve it year by year by year. That's one example. I could go through the whole list and come up with a lot more, but that, I hope, clarifies it for some people.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. Supervisor Decker, did you want to say anything else? No. Okay. Seeing no other lights? What is the motion?
The motion is
to approve the, we are approving Resolution 61. Motion passes.
Resolution 62 from the Finance Administration Committee, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $12,050,000 general obligation bonds and/or notes for law enforcement enhancement projects. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I would move resolution number 62.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Rose.
This, as is indicated, is $12,050,000 for law enforcement enhancement projects to be paid over a 20-year period of time. One of the items, I'll hit some of the major items included. It's a vehicle storage building of $1.7 million. What they call the Badger Millwork Building, which is will be used and converted to the Joint Services Garage, currently in the Public Safety Building. The Public Safety Building will include a renovated spot for the medical examiner, who is currently located at the Kenosha Hospital and will be vacated there. There will be a renovation of the shooting range in the Public Safety Building, renovation of a Joint Services Evidence Room, and the location of emergency government. These are the major projects included within that $12,050,000.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did approve this at the Finance Committee. I'm changing that. I'm not going to approve this one.
I think this is just a wish list for the Sheriff's Department. I want this to go back for some reconsideration. Some of these projects I don't know about. If we're looking at a lot of bonding tonight, there are other more important areas that we just discussed. I think we should pass on this one, send it back, review some of these projects a little bit more in detail. It just kind of, and I'm not trying to not encourage helping law enforcement. That's not my point. I just think this is a little bit much at this point. We're asking for a lot of bonding here tonight, $46 million. I think we can, let's take this one back and work on it at a future time. I don't see these as emergency needs right now. So I'm going to vote against this one, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Supervisor Holman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually support this measure, and I appreciate the wisdom of the sheriff to want to move in this direction and take these things on. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Holman. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to the sheriff's garage there, and I believe there is a need for the sheriff's department, but the cost is very high for a garage. I mean, there are several properties in the county that would meet the requirements at a much less cost. For example, in the 10,800 block of Summer Street, $480,000 for a 16,000 square foot, which has 23 acres around it. And I'm sure other supervisors have locations they could recommend also. So I'd like to move to take $1 million out of the law enforcement bonding. That would not eliminate the garage, but it would take part of the funding out of there for it. Instead of $1.7 million, it would be $700,000.
I have a first and a second. I will clear the board and we can talk on that. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right. This was the figure that was presented to the committee, and there was debate about, well, it should be cheaper, and that was considered, and it was the Public Works Director, Mr. Arbit, who presented the plans for the $1.7 million. It is housing a number of vehicles there that this board has authorized. The mobile command unit that was very expensive, other vehicles, and that was the figure. So that when we say, well, we want to spend $700,000 on a building, you don't have any kind of specs here to support it. That's what's troubling about this. And there was a presentation as to what it might have occurred a number of years ago, which was obviously less than today. $1,700,000 was the figure that wasn't just kind of pulled out of the sky, but one that was researched. So that is why the committee ultimately supported the $12,550,000 and with the inclusion of this item within it, because that was what was presented, and since the underlying need was felt by the committee to be supported, what followed was the $1.7 million.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Bostrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're kind of in my wheelhouse now, so I'm going to discuss some facts and figures about construction and real estate. And the reason why I seconded the motion by Supervisor Poole to reduce the number down to $700,000. $1.7 million for a 15,000 square foot building equates to $115 per square foot in construction costs. What that equates to is effectively the cost to build a single family home. And as this building has been described to me, it does not have a master bedroom. It does not have a full kitchen with cabinetry, with granite countertops, ceramic tile, plenty of high-end flooring, lots of drywall or expensive fixtures. It's been described to me as a storage shed or maybe a glorified pole barn. So $115 per square foot to construct a garage is way, way overpriced, especially when you figure that we actually own the land that we're building this building on. By way of example, Supervisor Poole suggested that there is a property that's available that's significantly cheaper. I can quote one in the industrial park. That is a almost 30,000 square foot building that was built 6 years ago for $1.7 million for sale today. That equates to $50 a square foot asking price for this 28 or almost $30,000 square foot building. So Supervisor Poole's motion to reduce that dollar amount to $700,000 equates to $46.67 per square foot for a 15,000 square foot building. I think that is a more reasonable number to construct what has been described as nothing, no frills, nothing more than a glorified pole barn. So that is why I supported that motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Von Frederick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like if the sheriff would maybe explain. We had a good presentation that night. I was kind of leery of the cost, but then when we got the explanation and saw the diagram of the building, I voted for it, and I think the whole committee voted for it. So I would ask the sheriff to, and I think it's about location too, not just buying some building someplace in a quarter of Kenosha County. It's a matter of location also. So if the sheriff can speak.
Sheriff Beth.
Thank you. I have no idea about the costs. The building itself will be located at the detention center. What that'll do is there'll be 24/7 security. There'll be cameras there, and we'll need that. We'll need this to be a secure location. We'll need this to be manned by secure cameras really 24 hours a day, because what this is going to do is hold evidence from major crimes. If we have, I guess I'll touch on the evidence part. Right now we currently store equipment at Jensen's, and they are in charge of monitoring some of this gear, vehicles from different accidents or different situations, or the drug unit, and it costs money, and it has to be secured. It can't be at an off-site that no one's there. It can't be there. We're going to have to man that building 24 hours a day to make sure that it's secure and no one's breaking into it. So if you buy a warehouse someplace else and expect to have vehicles or from drugs, maybe a drug seizure or a homicide, and just store it someplace off-site without manning it and having somebody watch it, you can't do it. So you have to have a building that's secure. You have to have someone watching it. It's going to be housed at the detention center. It'll cover those. You don't have to hire additional people. We'll run cameras out to it. We're going to have lifts inside of it that we'll be able to have our evidence technicians, both ours, the cities, any other agencies that wants to, they'll be able to come and go through the vehicle, the State Patrol. We're going to have an inside impound. There's going to be an outside impound for vehicles that really we just have to store outside, and the weather, it doesn't really matter what happens. There's plenty of vehicles at Jensen's for that. We're going to reduce the cost to the county and the taxpayers by having this on a county site. Also inside the building is going to be plenty of room for all of our equipment that we already have that's stored in all different facilities really throughout the county. We've got ATVs and snowmobiles. I believe there's, if I remember right, they're stored out at Bong. We've got the Mobile Command and a few other vehicles stored at the Kenosha Achievement Center. It costs us $1,000 a month to rent space in a shed there. We are going to bring everything into one site. To say that you can buy a piece of property that's currently out there and just store evidence without it being secure, you can't do it. You are going to have, we're going to have a deputy there. We're going to have somebody there monitoring this 24 hours a day. Yeah, it has to be a secure facility. Cost, like I said, I asked Mr. Arbor to come up here because I don't do that, but maybe he can explain a little bit better the 1.7.
So a couple of things. At the Finance Committee, I brought this, which none of you can actually see, but most of you, at least on Public Works, have seen it, as well as the Finance Committee. The building, as the sheriff outlined, there's really 3 functions to it. So there is storage. Emphasize the storage aspect of it. The vehicles, I was corrected by Captain Weicker, I thought there was $1 million worth. It's actually over $2 million worth of sheriff's vehicles that would be stored in this. Specialty vehicles that are not only used by the sheriff's department, but he becomes the sole source for this, that are available to other community agencies so they don't have to redundantly spend money to purchase these specialty vehicles. He's the source. Taking care of that $2 million worth of assets in an appropriate building, that's part of what? That's only one part of this. The second part is the storage of the evidence stuff that the sheriff has alluded to. As I understand it, any of the vehicles that we take in a federal type, drug type operation, those vehicles have to be stored inside. They can't be stored outside in a fenced in area. They have to be in an inside. Part of this building would be dedicated to that. The third piece is the other thing he referenced was there's actually a lift installed in this and evidence equipment so that they can perform all of their investigation work both as the vehicle's raised or if it's at grade level. So there's 3 functions that are taking place in the building. The building itself, from a construction standpoint, the architect I worked with is a local guy that is, he put the original cost estimates together in 1999 when the building was first proposed. And it was somewhere in the $500,000 area then. Smaller, because we had less stuff in 1999. And the evidence piece of it wasn't even part of the equation. He gave me references of what's happening in terms of a pre-engineered steel building, which is what this is, in a county just west of us. He didn't want me to use their name because they're struggling with it right now. They were going to put 2 satellite public works facilities in. They have a centralized facility. It's a large county. They wanted to have 2 facilities, one on each end of the county, to store equipment, snow equipment specifically, so that they could respond to things in a more efficient way. Their estimates came from the architect, because he was the architect that did the estimates, were just under $1 million per building. And they said, there's no way, that's just a storage shed. So they budgeted $500,000. They went out to bids. The bids came in at $970,000 each. They now don't have their buildings. They weren't able to complete that project for this year. They're scrambling to figure out how they're going to finance and deal with it next year. The cost to put this building up at about $100 to $115 a square foot, that is what a pre-engineered building, multi-purpose, that's not just an open building. There are some other functions that take place in this, but there isn't any, there's literally no bathroom, there's nothing fancy about it. It's just a very well-made, tall building to accommodate the mobile command center, which is in effect a semi-truck trailer, to accommodate that kind of stuff. The loaders in there, all the other specialty equipment, bomb disposal equipment, SWAT type vehicle, all those specialty things that are literally dispersed. Some are, as I understand it, even housed at the sheriff's farm because there isn't a place for them. We've got some at the county center. There's some in the public safety building. So when they have an event, they've got to mobilize. Okay, you're going to get that vehicle from over there. You guys go get that vehicle. No, now they can have it in one place when they have an event that they need to respond to, which lately seems like it's about once a week. They're in one place, they mobilize, they can get all their vehicles, and they disperse from one place. From a tactical standpoint, it sounds like it makes a whole bunch of sense, too. So from a finance standpoint, the other example the architect gave me, there's a camp, a private camp in Kenosha County that built a pavilion for their camp in, I thought he said 2000. I'm a little fuzzy on this now, but I think it was 2000 at a cost of $1.8 million. They are now looking at building that exact same building. They're not changing anything. The exact footprint. That's a $3.2 million building to put up in 2017 is when they're going to put it up. So the cost of construction, inflation for commercial buildings, as evidenced, it's one of the benefits of having a robust, commercial development. The longer we put these things off, it's not going to get cheaper. It's going to get more expensive. And if we want to protect the $2 million investment we've got in very specialized equipment that's available for the entire community, that's one of the core functions of the building. So hopefully that sheds a little bit more light on kind of what the whole building's about.
Thank you, Mr. Arbett. And
with that explanation, I would ask the board to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
Move to close debate.
I still have lights on the floor.
You just remember voted in favor of the budget, which includes this item. This debate probably would have been more apropos during the discussion on the budget where you have authorized it. Here you're authorizing payment. So it's hard to understand why this wasn't debated at that time and with a motion to strike it from the list of capital projects.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Dodge, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I had originally made the motion during the Finance Committee to remove the $1.7 million. And part of it was the words of pole barn that had come out had bothered me. And so I had a second from Supervisor Retzloff. At that time, Mr. Arbert had come out and given us the explanation, pretty much what he had told us tonight. In the past, the sheriff and I have been at odds on some issues, and at that time I learned some of the high expenses that the Sheriff's Department goes through storing vehicles. The vehicles that the undercover drug agents drive, they can't leave them out in the open so everybody sees them. They have to be stored inside and out of public view. We're paying a lot of money. There's not only those cars, but the cars that are involved in accidents and evidence have to be stored inside. We're spending a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money, for a long time on items like that. We're getting nothing in return. Granted, this is an expense, but it's not a pole barn. And it is something that I think that our Sheriff Department needs, and I'm in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. I'm going to go off of this just for a moment because we have not heard from Supervisor Gens yet tonight.
Thank you. With this cold, I was trying to forestall this, but I've heard enough on this one. I was in real estate for 16 years, and I was a lender for 9. And I'm still only 29 years old, so I had that up. But anyway, regardless, I understand, I understand what Supervisor Bostrom is saying, but you can't compare what they're doing here to a home. And I was taught by a very smart real estate man, Mr. Mills, the time value of money. And had we done this when the sheriff first proposed it, we'd be saving ourselves about half of the money that we're doing now. We debate about this, and we wait another couple years, and we're going to be at the $2.5 million mark. So this for a sheriff's department where we just got done voting on the budget, and they're what, 40% of the budget, to have them spread all over the county in a haphazard way is absolutely ludicrous. I analyzed every phase of Mr. Arbert's report to us when it was on the Finance Committee, and it all makes sense. I mean, we're paying, we've got cars and vehicles all over the place. We have over $2 million in assets that we have to protect. We have vehicles to store. Just from a central command point of view, I mean, it should be at the detention center. So this is just something that, I know we're always looking to be fiscally responsible, and I think this budget is that. This is not a place to cut from here. So I will not be supporting a cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've not heard. The reason that I support this motion is I don't believe there's been an RFP done on this building. What goes in the building is irrelevant to the construction of the building. We already have the land, and I've just got a very difficult time believing that it's going to take $115 per square foot to put up a prefab steel building. I may be completely wrong on that because I don't construct those, but it's just very difficult for me to believe it's going to be that expensive. We don't have an RFP in front of us, so we're just guessing. We're going off what the architect is saying it's going to be. But I don't know why we don't have an RFP for a building like this, so we know what the cost is. It's just conjecture right now. I agree that we need it. It's a worthwhile entity because of the fact that where these things are being stored and that it needs to be secured, probably the correction center is the best place. There's going to be no cost in labor. You put up the cameras, away you go. It's just hard for me to believe it's going to take $1.7 million. But I could be proven wrong if I actually had a quote in front of me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Bastrom, last time to speak, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak on this one more time. Now, I just want to make something perfectly clear. I don't presume to know how to run a sheriff's department. That's why we have a professional doing it. And I agree 100%. It should be in the location that we're talking about, not advocating that it goes anyplace else. And nor can I speak on some of the examples that Mr. Arbit spoke about. I'm not familiar with them. I trust him and the information that he got. The examples I was bringing forward was a real-world Kenosha County warehouse with office that was built recently for significantly less than what we're budgeting. And to Supervisor Skalitsky's point, and it's a very good one, it's okay to get general ideas from an architect, but it really should have, some solid backing from professionals that are willing to bid on it. And I know we'll do that when it comes time to bid for it. So I think we're grossly over budgeting for this building. I'm not suggesting it's not needed. I think it is needed, which is why I supported a motion to reduce the number to a number that, from my experience, is a number that is appropriate. That's what I wanted to get across to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Ron Frederick, last time to speak. Nope. Okay. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd just like to make a comment on what Supervisor Rose said. He said, we already approved it in the budget, so we should approve this bonding. That's the whole point of why we want to remove this now, and why when supervisors say, well, this is just the initial resolution, we can vote for it later. Supervisor Rose spoke specifically how the mindset of this county board. We approved it in the budget, so we got to approve it. There's no changes. We approved it in the budget, so we got to vote for it. Supervisor Skalitsky stated it perfectly previously, that we're always told, well, this is just the initial resolution, we can change it later. But then Supervisor Rose says, well, we voted on the budget, we got to approve it. That's the mindset of this county board, and I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
I know this is my last time to speak. Just so everybody's aware, what we're doing here is we're authorizing, we're doing, like Supervisor Bostrom and I know, we're doing an appraisal. I mean, we're doing an estimate on what it would cost. That's what we have to be ready for. And we're using the best information available. None of us here deal in this type of thing. That's why we have Mr. Arbit to go out and talk to architects who actually put up these buildings and do this type of work. Now, no matter what's said by any supervisor, we do have a kick at the cat later, and it will come back to us when it goes out, when we go out and we actually do the project. So we will know what the costs are then and there. But you have to start somewhere, and we're authorizing this building. And I think it's a mistake not to move forward with this, authorize it. If we're way off base and it comes in at 1.2 million, that's what it'll come in at. I mean, the administration isn't going to just say, hey, you said 1.7 million, so we're going to spend it. That's not the way they do it when it goes on a project like this. So, all this debate back and forth, if you see the need for this, support it. If you don't see the need for it, don't. But I'll tell you what, I do see the need for it, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Decker, did you have anything else? No? Supervisor Rose, your last time to speak.
All right, thank you. I think it's well to keep in mind that the bond says not to exceed, and if the bids are lower, we won't borrow to the extent of the resolution.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no other lights. Roll call has been requested. This is to decrease the bond to seven. Yes is to decrease, no is to leave it the way it is. It is to decrease it to 700,000. Is that correct? Take 1 million out. I don't care how long you want to speak. Failed. Motion failed. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Are we back on the original CIP?
Simple
Yes.
majority, Supervisor Ritzoff, it's a simple majority. It's a simple majority. That's it.
For that motion.
That was a motion.
That was just a motion. Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the committee chair on this one, is this CIP also seeking 5 years of authorization for this particular CIP motion, or resolution, I'm sorry? Supervisor Rose?
Yes.
I see heads shaking yes
Correct.
in the back.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank
Gibson
you.
is saying yes.
Now we're talking about a little bit different situation. It's not long-term. It's not roads and infrastructure. It's talking about a building. A building doesn't take 5 years to build, and the other things that are in here aren't going to take 5 years to build. I'm not going to support a 5-year authorization for the same rationale that I stated previously. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. Yeah. Seeing no other lights, do I have a motion? Okay. To approve the original? We're working on the resolution, apparently. So yes, if you're in favor of the resolution, no if you are not. I didn't think that that anyone had made that. Oh. Okay. Resolution passes. County Clerk?
Resolution 63 from Finance Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance not to exceed $19,630,000 general obligation bonds and/or notes for highway projects, including the Highway S project between Highway 31 and I-94. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I move the resolution.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose, a second by Supervisor Retzloff. Supervisor Rose.
This is the financing for the Highway S project. The total cost is going to be approximately $24 million. It's anticipated that $5 million of that will be paid for by grants, and that our obligation will be the sum listed in the bond of not to exceed $19,630,000. This is a multi-year project. It's a major economic development. This is money also circulating in the community. It's between Highway 31 and I-94.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I sit here and I vote for these resolutions because they're good for the whole county. And then I look at what they're doing, and about 80% of it is the rural area. And here we have supervisors from the rural area voting against every one of these resolutions, voting against the total budget, and getting everything that they want out there. And then they can go tell their taxpayers that they vote. They're the only ones that care about the county budget. I mean, they're sitting there being the ones that are saying, those guys in the city are the big spenders, and we're the guys that are looking out for you. So when you run for election next time, you can brag about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't take my position on these CIPs as something that I can brag about when I'm talking to constituents the next time I run for election. And without these types of infrastructure projects, the city would start to strangulate on itself. So it isn't just about rural areas benefiting from it. It's how it's being approached. I haven't seen these major projects like this ask for 5 years of authorization in the past. I don't know why it's changing now. I don't understand or agree with the rationale that I'm hearing. There's a commitment to this project. I support the project. I do not support 5 years of authorization. Why? What I've previously said. That doesn't mean that it isn't a good project and that it is not good for Kenosha. It is. It does border my district, and so I support the project. I don't support 5 years of authorization. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. Seeing no other lights. Oh, Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I do support this resolution. It does go through part of my district. And it, I think everything needs to be looked at individually, what it does for the county. I think Mr. Frederick's comments are very poorly taken, because each one of these items I have taken very personally. I did vote for the budget. I am approving most of these capital projects. I look at these things individually and what they do, what they cost. I do my homework. I don't have to excuse myself to go to a Cubs World Series game. So I take offense to his comments about what he make if he is referring to me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Seeing no other lights. Yes, if you are in favor of the resolution. No, if you are not. Resolution passes.
Resolution 64 from Finance and Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,075,000 general obligation promissory notes for enterprise resource planning projects. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I move the resolution.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Rose.
This is to replace the 20-year-old enterprise resource planning software dealing with financing, the financial department, such things as purchasing, bill paying, and monitoring contracts and grants for Kenosha County. This, I say, replaces an existing system of some 20 years, and it's necessary.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
I just want you to know I don't apologize for taking that 3 hours to go to that Cub game.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor. Yes. Oh, you were. Now you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the either the chair of the committee or perhaps the expert, I realize that they're currently using J.D. Edwards, because I didn't see it in the CIP. Do you know what specific software package they've elected for this particular upgrade?
Defer to Mr. Gersten on that.
We're going through an RFP, and we've looked at I think we looked at 19, we got it narrowed down to 2, but because we're still in a competitive process, could I beg the indulgence of the board and not reveal it yet?
That's fine, thank you. I saw last year we had budgeted sought $700,000 in CIP for ERP improvement, and now we're looking for another $3.5 million. What was done with the $700,000 with regards to this if we're in the RFP process right now?
We've used it for the planning process. So, for example, we hired an agency called the Government Finance Officers Association to help us with the RFP. And there's other costs, but that's an example. So.
$700,000 sounds like an excessive amount for planning on an an ERP replacement. And I realize you had some ancillary things. Once again, this is a very worthwhile project. I realize that ERP systems are vital to the inner workings of any significant or substantial organization. Without it, you can't function. Mom and pop or garage shop can. You need an ERP system. But once again, we're asking for 3 years' worth of authorization for a project that only needs 1 year at a time. I support the project, but will not be voting to support the approach for authorization. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Rose?
Yes, I would like to call on the Information Director, Mr. Laycock. I think he has something to add. This is a
area. And here we have supervisors from the rural area voting against every one of these resolutions, voting against the total budget, and getting everything that they want out there. And then they can go tell their taxpayers that they vote. They're the only ones that care about the county budget. I mean, they're sitting there being the ones that are saying, those guys in the city are the big spenders, and we're the guys that are looking out for you. So when you run for election next time, you can brag about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't take my position on these CIPs as something that I can brag about when I'm talking to constituents the next time I run for election. And without these types of infrastructure projects, the city would start to strangulate on itself. So it isn't just about rural areas benefiting from it. It's how it's being approached. I haven't seen these major projects like this ask for 5 years of authorization in the past. I don't know why it's changing now. I don't understand or agree with the rationale that I'm hearing. There's a commitment to this project. I support the project. I do not support 5 years of authorization. What I've previously said. That doesn't mean that it isn't a good project and that it is not good for Kenosha. It is. It does border my district, and so I support the project. I don't support 5 years of authorization. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Seeing no other lights. Oh, Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I do support this resolution. It does go through part of my district. And it, I think everything needs to be looked at individually, what it does for the county. I think Mr. Frederick's comments are very poorly taken, because each one of these items I have taken very personally. I did vote for the budget. I am approving most of these capital projects. I look at these things individually and what they do, what they cost. I do my homework. I don't have to excuse myself to go to a Cubs World Series game. So I take offense to his comments about what he make if he is referring to me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Seeing no other lights. Yes, if you are in favor of the resolution. No, if you are not. Resolution passes.
Resolution 64 from Finance and Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,075,000 general obligation promissory notes for enterprise resource planning projects. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I move the resolution.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Rose.
This is to replace the 20-year-old enterprise resource planning software dealing with financing, the financial department, such things as purchasing, bill paying, and monitoring contracts and grants for Kenosha County. This, I say, replaces an existing system of some 20 years, and it's necessary.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
I just want you to know I don't apologize for taking that 3 hours to go to that Cub game.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor. Yes. Oh, you were. Now you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the either the chair of the committee or perhaps the expert, I realize that they're currently using J.D. Edwards, because I didn't see it in the CIP. Do you know what specific software package they've elected for this particular upgrade?
I defer to Mr. Gersten on that.
We're going through an RFP, and we've looked at, I think we looked at 19, we got it narrowed down to 2, but because we're still in a competitive process, could I beg the indulgence of the board and not reveal it yet?
That's fine, thank you. I saw last year we had budgeted sought $700,000 in CIP for ERP improvement, and now we're looking for another $3.5 million. What was done with the $700,000 with regards to this if we're in the RFP process right now?
We've used it for the planning process. So, for example, we hired an agency called the Government Finance Officers Association to help us with the RFP. And there's other costs, but that's an example.
$700,000 sounds like an excessive amount for planning on an an ERP replacement. And I realize you had some ancillary things. Once again, this is a very worthwhile project. I realize that ERP systems are vital to the inner workings of any significant or substantial organization. Without it, you can't function. Mom and pop or garage shop you need an ERP system. But once again, we're asking for 3 years worth of authorization for a project that only needs 1 year at a time. I support the project, but will not be voting to support the approach for authorization. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Sklitsky. Supervisor Rose?
Yes, I would like to call on the Information Director, Mr. Laycock. I think he has something to add. This is a technical area, and I think we ought to be fully informed on that.
Right. So, thank you. I think we have not spent the entire $700,000 that was allocated for the project this year. What we've done, as Dave mentioned, was we've hired GFOA to help us with the project. We've also hired a project manager to help with the needs assessments and collect all the information that was required to prepare the RFP. So whatever we haven't spent of that $700,000 is going to be carried over into 2017. As we're getting results back from the RFP, we're seeing costs range from $1.6 million to $3.9 million. So we're estimating total cost of the project right now is going to be right around $3 million, 3.9, between 3 and 3.9. But we haven't made the determination of the vendor at this point, so that is the logic behind the request for the funding.
Thank you, Mr. Laycock. Supervisor Rose, you still have the floor?
No, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sklitsky?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't realize Mr. Laycock was still here. What's a standard contract's terms with regards to payment for a project of this nature? And do you know that? Or Mr. Gertzen, do you know that?
Well, I think typically we base payment on milestones and conditions. So a lot of times what we've seen with, for example, public safety software, Upon receipt of software, there's a payment due. Upon installation, there's a payment due. Upon testing, there's a payment due. So as we go through the negotiation process, we'll work closely with purchasing and corp counsel to make sure that usually we try to make it more back-end weighted as far as how we're paying things to make sure that we're pleased with the product that we get. Usually, you know, we're going to see this as going to be a 2-year implementation. So it's going to be through 2018 before we get the entire project done. So we'll see the funds spread over those 2 years.
Would a 30-30-40 approach be something you'd look at, or would you want to lower it at the front end to maybe 20 and the back end is to a 50? Does that type of a thing for delivery, installation, training, is that a pretty reasonable?
You know, it's
contract terms.
I would say it's very highly desirable, but what we need to do is work with the software vendor, and you know, it's the art of negotiations as far as they would like more money up front, we would like more money on the back end, so it's where do we meet in the middle. So it's difficult at this point to say, you know, 30-30-40 or whatever it may be.
Do you happen to recall the terms that you used for the public safety software?
I was not directly responsible. I don't know. Supervisor Gentz may have some information on that.
That's okay. I realize an ERP installation does take multiple years, but again, we're talking about 20 or 30% up front, 30% when it's received, and then when it's finished up, you pay the final amount. We don't need 3 years authorization. We can do that on an annual basis. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Splitsky. Seeing no other lights. Yes, if you're in favor of the resolution. No, if you are not. Resolution passes. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, just for the record, I just did some calculations on my phone here, and I've been on this county board now for the last 6.5 years, and I've missed 0 county board meetings in that time and 2 committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a first by Supervisor Hallman and a second by Supervisor Kavicki to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. One of the things that Clark taught me was to never take the bait. Never take the bait.
Oh, just ignore it.
Just ignore it.
Ron gets fed up with them all, though. That's the problem.